Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is roll call. Belinda?
Sam Morocco,
Here.
Jason Borsheim,
Here.
Brian Galley,
Here.
Bill Scarborough,
There.
Tom Patel,
Here.
Belinda Billings here, Joe Sucher.
Here.
I'd like to welcome Sam back to the Planning Commission,
Thank you.
and I'd like to say thank you to Tom, because I think if I'm right, Tom's told me he's chosen not to seek reappointment next month, so this will be his last meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Next item is review of the agenda. We need to amend it to delete F2 and G1.
I'll make a motion to accept tonight's agenda, deleting items F2 and G1 at the petitioner's request.
Second?
We got a second from Jason?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Next item is public hearing for items not on the agenda. This is a public hearing, like, as I said, for items that are not on the agenda. We always provide this at the beginning of the meetings. Agenda items, you will be provided the opportunity to comment on them as we get to those on the agenda. So we ask you to limit your comments strictly to items not listed on the agenda. We will open it up, and if you want to speak, raise your hand, and you will be recognized, and if you're here, we ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address, and proceed. And if you're online, you can send a signal somehow. I assume it's obvious. And we'll do the in-person comments first, and then the online second. So with that, I will open the public hearing for items not on the agenda. Any comments from people in the audience? No comments? Okay. How about online? You got two people, right?
Just one, but,
Oh, BO's you?
yeah, they had their hand up, but they said they can't hear anything, so it's a little different.
Do we want to give them a minute?
Dina, can you speak?
She might be muted.
There should be an option on your computer for your mic. Make sure it's unchecked or doesn't have a line through it.
There it is.
Okay,
Heard
I
something.
can't hear anyone there. I don't know if you can hear me,
We can hear you.
but I can't hear anybody there. So I will just go ahead with my statement, I guess. My name is Dina Slanda, and I live at 6600 Nadette. This is not the first time that I have been here to speak to the Planning Commission. Only the last time, it was a little bit heated. We were kind of taunted with impossibilities like a high-rise hotel and whatnot. I apologize for the kids. So we'll try to stick to facts. Tonight, I'm speaking in regards to the continuation of the Red Barn developer's attempt, again, to skirt the township's zoning ordinances and master plan vision. I realize these issues have been pulled from the agenda, but we all know they will be back. In my gut, I think they're really working hard to find a loophole so that they can put gas pumps in. I've done a little bit of research on Pamplona and found that convenience stores and gas stations are his thing. He's not interested in putting in something that is an allowed development for this piece of property. It makes me mad, and it makes the community mad, and I know our neighborhood mad, that we continue to let the developers push the boundaries and ignore the rules for development. I'm struggling to understand why the township would spend so much time working on a master plan just to turn around and dismiss it every time a developer comes before you. It's my understanding that the Planning Commission's job is to uphold the vision for the township, and this is not that. I have an entire list here of how even a party store, minus the gas station part of it, is in violation of not only the master plan and the ordinances, but I can just email those to you if you'd like, instead of sitting here and reading through pretty much the same statement that I read to the Board of Trustees when they made the logical and appropriate decision to turn this down the last time. At the August 8th Planning Commission meeting, Bill Scarborough said to me, "You knew exactly that the property was for sale when you bought your house. What did you expect?" Well, Bill, 4 months later, I'll tell you what I expect. I expect the township to stick by its ordinances, by its master plan. I expect that when somebody buys a piece of property, they too know what is allowed there and what the vision for that spot is. And again, this is not that. According to the township's ordinances, we are not allowed to approve anything that decreases property value, that creates pollution, all of these extra things. And that's exactly what this would do. And when Michael Utuma signed the purchase agreement for this piece of property, he knew exactly what was expected for this property and decided that he didn't care. He was going to go and try to break the rules anyway. In the zoning ordinances and in the master plan, it says that the community and the citizens will be taken into account when these decisions are made. And until recently, that has not been the case. The expectation of the community is that the Planning Commission stands for the community and by its master plan and by zoning ordinances, and stops allowing people to come in and do things that are completely off-brand for what this township has said they want it to look like. I expect the citizens' wants and needs to be considered and valued. I expect you to do the right thing. I assure you that we are not going away about this. We're prepared to come back stronger this time than we did last time, because now we're actually really mad. It shouldn't have even been allowed to come back at all. And that's all.
Thank you for your comments. Can you hear us?
I can now, thank you.
First thing I'd say is I'm not gonna get an argument with you about what I said. I will not accept what you said I said to you, but we can let that go. You're correct, this has been withdrawn. As far as we know right now, it's been discussed as being a party store. We have an obligation, even if we don't like a project, to give him a due hearing if he meets our ordinances. And the fact that we have a piece of property whose existing zoning doesn't comply with the master plan does put us in a pickle.
But that needs to be addressed then.
Yes, it does. But I'm not, we'll have to consider that. So we will hold this gentleman to the ordinance. Special land use is allowed as a gas station is allowed as a special land use in conjunction with a planned shopping center. It is my personal opinion that a party store does not meet the definition of a planned shopping center, so we'll have to see where that takes us. Anybody else have any comments in that regard? Thank you. Anybody else online have any comments? Okay, I will close the public hearing to items not on the agenda. Next item is the Opportunities 2035 Master Plan update. We've got comments from Oakland County, Residential Open Space Advisory Committee, Parks, Rec and Seniors Advisory Committee, Senior Center Advisory Committee. Brian, we did not get anything from DDA sidewalk one, nothing from them. It's disappointing, and I reached out to all of them, and, but be that as it may. I think the county and the ones I mentioned are pretty cut and dry. What I would suggest, Megan, is maybe you don't need to go into each one in detail, just to highlight, and then we'll open the public hearing, and then we'll dig a little deeper. How's that sound?
Mr. Chair, for folks who are here for the public hearing, would you like me to just highlight changes that were made to this master plan draft so that they have that context as well?
Okay.
So, this is an update of the current master plan. The township has been very disciplined about updating this every 5 to 7 years. And basically, if you were looking for changes in the document, number one, it looks very graphically different. It was updated per the logo and colors of the township. In the introduction, previous master plans, public participation, we did have a robust public participation process. The county actually complimented the township on that public participation at their hearing. Those were updated. Obviously, the background and studies and summaries were all updated using current data. The goals and objectives, this planning commission, I think, worked very hard to update those and tweak those. I think we touched almost every single one of those goals and objectives. The master land use plan was changed a bit, and a lot of that had to deal with changing things that are office to attached single residential in places that it was felt to be appropriate. And also dealing with open space, and how there's the development of the open space committee and what their role is in the development process. For future land use maps, at the suggestion of the planning commission, they were broken into 4 quadrants, so it's easier to read. For target plans, the Dixie Highway corridor was updated with what the DDA has done and changes along the corridor. And for the South Shore corridor, the Corridor Improvement Agency, and that coming online was put in along with other improvements. For infrastructure, that was updated in terms of non-motorized, motorized transportation, complete streets, changes in access management, and then improvements that have happened in all of the utilities and transportation networks. The Green Infrastructure Plan was enhanced, again, talking about the Open Space Committee, and bringing some more context into that. And in implementation, I think you had a major change in that you have an implementation matrix that lists actions and their priorities. In terms of what the county had said, we gave you a memo on December 5th. There are a number of things in there where we said it would be good to have a planning commission weigh in specifically on whether to include Groveland Township as a municipality that borders Independence Township. They have just a little wee border up on the north. There was a suggestion to organize the use descriptions by directing the user to a target area or sub area moving in. That would be an additional cost, and that would be quite a bit of formatting and inserting of text. So that would be some additional time put in, and we didn't want to recommend that until you as a body discussed it. Also, the county suggested that with the border of Waterford Township at the intersection of Mann and Clintonville Road, that be updated to reflect existing and ongoing development in the area. And we wanted you to look at that and feel and let us know whether you felt that that was necessary. Also, the county suggested that all the maps are aligned with text directly next to each other. Again, that's a bit like the other suggestion where it would take a lot of picking apart and moving things. And we didn't know whether you as planning commissioners, when you were reading the document, whether you had that same impression. And so wanted your take as to whether that is a worthy investment of time. The county asked that The township in the master plan acknowledged that North Oakland Transportation Authority is serving the township as of March 24th. Again, we can add that, but we wanted direction from you. They asked for the master plan to expand on the community development opportunities by including a brownfield redevelopment information. We do that on a regular basis, with mostly staff, and felt like that wasn't necessarily necessary to mention in the plan, but if you felt otherwise, we could absolutely do that. And finally, the last recommendation for the county had to deal with expanding on the infrastructure's utility goals in developing a multi-purpose stormwater management system. We really weren't sure what that meant and felt like putting it in the goals and objectives wasn't necessarily appropriate, but I think it's worthwhile to put in the implementation table or matrix in order for something to be studied, to put it on the township's radar as something to look into as an asset, but not to commit you to anything at this point. We reviewed the open space and the comments, I believe there were 2 sets from the Senior Center and the Parks and Rec Authority Advisory Committee. All of those, we didn't have any objection to those, adding those in.
Okay, thank you. Let's come back to the ones that you're looking for direction from the planning commission after we do the public hearing.
Yes.
Before I open, any commission members have any brief comments? Again, we'll dig a little deeper after the hearing.
What if we did this, like, we were writing a book and just put these like in the back of the book, like for the next.
The comments?
Yeah, like for the next time we do the master plan, these would be the first things that would be addressed if we wanted to save money, you know, and having these examined and worked on. In my mind, I'm only just one member, it's not a bad idea to have a record of them, but if it's not part of the master plan, it's not an official part of the master plan, so. I mean, anything, if there's anything in any of those comments that we don't update in the master plan, it might be nice to somehow informally attach a summary of those to it. To the back of the book.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I will open the public hearing for the 2035 master plan update. We will take comments from the audience and then online. And again, please raise your hand, wait to be recognized, come to the podium and give us your name. Comments, please. Nobody's here. Nobody wants to say anything? How about online? Okay, one more opportunity. Okay, we have no comments from the public, so that must mean they like it. I will close the public hearing. So let's, Megan, before you address the PC things you need direction on, let's just see if any other planning commission members have comments or questions.
I have one.
Yes.
So that property, 08193020005, that's at the corner of I-75 and Dixie. The Oakland County says that was transferred to Independence Township, but it's not in our map. Has that been added?
We can add that. What we're proposing is just to add it to the future land use map, rather than to go back and include it in all of the maps. Since the future land use map is the thing that is the guiding document. And in talking to our GIS professional, they said that it wouldn't be that difficult just to do it for one map.
As I understand it, they didn't give the piece of property to us, they just delegated the planning for it, correct?
This is the park board?
Yeah.
From my understanding, the open space committee asked the township to purchase that, and I believe we purchased it.
What's
that? Is that correct, Sam? The park property, off Perry Lake Road?
No, I'm sorry.
I think you're on
Is
the
that the
right
one we're talking about?
Encore at Deer Hill Villas.
I think
Oh,
it's,
Encore, yeah,
Yeah.
so what that is that that was part of an interlocal agreement to add that. I mean, that was basically added to the township as land during that project.
so did we take ownership of it, or just,
Well, the township, no, but yeah, I mean, it is part of the interlocal agreement says we have all the utilities, the fire, police, services, and the tax authority there.
Inspections.
Yeah, so essentially, took that piece of land over that was, Encore was split between
everything
Springfield.
short of legal title?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bump out on all of our maps,
Okay,
and I think it wasn't shown in these documents.
Yeah, and the county said that Springfield had recently done a master plan, they had asked them to take it off their maps.
I think that'd be a good note to, if you're only gonna do it to the master, the land use plan, to make a note for the next iteration to adjust the other maps. Anybody else? Okay, Megan, why don't we, dive into the county comments you need, direction on?
Groveland Township. Just recognizing that as a municipality that borders Independence Township. There would be some drafting of text. We are gonna need to open up the document anyway to add some things such as the red lines from the Open Space Committee. So we can add that to the list, but we would have to draft some text.
Okay,
Well, if it is a budding independent municipality, it seems like it should be included, even if it is small.
Okay.
Just so you know, they did get, the distribution, so.
All right, then, so I'm taking silence as agreement from the rest of you that you agree with Chair Scarborough and Planning Commissioner Billings. For 3B, organizing those use descriptions, directing the user to specific target area plans, or moving classifications from descriptions to such sub-areas. We hadn't gotten the comment back from you that any of how the maps and the graphics and the text were arranged was confusing. This was specifically from staff there at the county. So this would be moving a lot of stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a major formatting project.
Yes.
From what you're saying, I don't think it's important you have to rewrite the whole thing, basically, every page.
it's not gonna result in any, change in concept or anything,
No.
so, yeah.
And historically, this is how it's been formatted.
I guess I have a question about the map formatting. I do, and this could be a little bit off topic, but I find it somewhat so if you're looking for the future plans of what we are anticipated zoning, it's not right next to the underlying zoning, the mapping, you know what I mean? So when I'm trying to, I'm thinking, for instance, I know that we've zoned, let's just say, for example, the county courthouse property. We know that the future planning is anticipated to be office service, like the parcels coming into the township on that side of the road right there. But then to go back and find out what they actually are zoned, each of those parcels, it's not easy on a computer to do. You gotta go through hundreds of pages, try to find this map that shows what the current zoning is, then find what they're not, I guess they're just not as close to each other for a layman, even somebody who's been doing it a while, to
Yeah.
try to quickly say like this parcel's owned, commercial, but it's visionary is OS1, because our visionary plans are a little bit distant from our current underlining, and I don't know if there's
Yeah.
any way to to make that comparison, because what we're actually doing, we have petitioners coming in, seeing what it's zoned isn't right next to what they should feel comfortable asking us to, do, because the future zoning plan isn't adjacent to the underlying zoning plan in the master plan, and I don't, maybe that's just how it is and you gotta do the work, and,
Well, I think, can I respond?
absolutely.
I think there's two things that, number one, you have an interactive map, where, a developer could go and they click on the parcel, and it does give the future land use and the zoning. So if someone's computer savvy and knows how to use that map, that is there. However, I do know of communities that produce a map that says where the future land use map and the zoning map don't agree. I would not suggest putting that in the master plan, because you only update the master plan once every 5 to 7 years, maybe 10 years. What might be a good thing is to put in the implementation matrix is to ask staff once a year to publish a map that has those discrepancies, because you'll have rezonings during the time.
That's my point, so
Yeah.
I think the goal of, and the direction of the township board as a representative from them, and the work that the planning commission's done, is that we wanna align our current zoning with our future zoning as soon as possible, which would eliminate
Right.
people needing to ask for, different special land uses and variances, because they don't align currently. And that kind of put us at a little bit of a quandary with, Red Barn, only because had we, when we decided we wanted it to be office service, rezoned it office service, it wouldn't have had that C4 dangling out there. And I know that we want to try to align those together. So that was what, so I agree with you that that's hopefully, as we get we become more compatible with our underlying zoning and our future master plan zoning, that those are gonna change continually. Like you said, those are not gonna be consistent for a 5-year period.
Right.
They should be a work in progress, so I agree with you on that.
Right, and maybe
For
it's
sure.
something that's part of the, report the planning commission's supposed to do to the township board once a year, that annual report. That becomes part of it. Because then you, as the township board, are budgeting and planning with the planning commission for their next year's agenda, and you could put things like a township-initiated rezoning on their docket and their work list, and have the appropriate budget behind it.
I think we're perfectly at that point for that discussion now that the master plan is being agreed to, which gives us the guideline to go back and say, all right, what's not, and I know Bill's been working on that too, what doesn't align, and how many parcels that would be, how much that would cost to realign, and Brian can put that together. And now going into 2025, now's the time, now's the time to have that dialogue.
So do you feel like that needs to change in the text of the master plan, or do you feel like this discussion would move that forward?
I think that would take care of it, as just us kind of knowing that's what we're goals, how Bill's gonna move that along,
As you alluded, I have been working on that, at home. I've started attacking it in our target areas, because those are the most heavily commercial areas, commercial office areas. I've got all of Dixie Highway done, I've got Town Center, and I got Pine Knob done. To be honest, I'm kinda surprised at the lack of alignment. Along Dixie Highway, by way of example, there's a lot of frontage that's master plan for local commercial, which in the alignment of zoning districts versus master plan districts, local commercial is generally C1, but yet a lot of the area along Dixie is actually C3. So I'm surprised. There are some areas, by way of example, where it might be zoned MS in a commercial district, and I'm not sure that's an issue. We can discuss that when I bring it forward, but because a gas station is a sort of commercial use, so I don't know if, I'll be curious what our experts say about that. So my plan was to have that done in the next month or two and bring it to the commission and have a discussion about how we proceed. So, other comments?
No, that's good. rational way to approach it, I think.
Okay, next item.
3C, whether to change the future land use designations for those properties at the Waterford Township border at the intersection of Man Road and Clintonville Road. So that would necessitate a change to the map, also a bit of a change to the text.
Is that big?
It would take us a little bit. So, I mean, it's not huge, but it's just,
Shouldn't be huge.
yeah. And it's probably a good thing to do in that you are then updating it based on changes that have happened across the border and in also in Independence Township.
I guess I kinda think we should do it. Anybody disagree?
No. What would be, Mr. Chairman, what would be the objections to doing it or not doing it? I mean, it sounds like something that should be done.
Yeah, it's a small switch. The objection to not doing it is if you wanted to minimize costs, then you could put it on the list of things to be looked at the next time. But, Brian, I think you were saying that development's pretty set.
Yeah, Insignia, they're talking about the Insignia project. You know, I just know from a GIS perspective, the way I set up the layer in 2006, that it should be a flip of a switch. You know, it's just changing the category. So it should be pretty easy, but, I don't know what their fabric looks like now, so.
It's just when we change one map, we're gonna have to swap out 5, cause they're there. It'll take us about an hour of time.
Can I suggest that you give it an attempt, and if it becomes a major obstacle, you somehow give us some feedback on that?
Yes, we can do that. All right. Number 4, aligning the maps and graphs with adjacent subject material. Again, we felt like that was like organizing the use descriptions. That's gonna take a lot of moving and whatnot. And if you as readers didn't feel the same confusion as the folks at Oakland County, then we would say not to invest that time.
I'm good with it.
Agreed, yeah.
NODA. So, whether to add the NODA to the transportation section. This is something that's came up at the tail end of the process. Again, it's like a sentence or two, but that's a change to the listing of transportation services, and we wanted to have you talk about it before we went ahead and made any changes.
I would add that it was one of the things the senior advisory committee recommended too.
Okay.
So,
It is a big service to the area.
yeah,
so-
big. Actually, from what I understand, we're giving better transportation service now.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Since we're past the probation period, it makes sense to, they're not going
Did we-
anywhere now.
Did the board approve the final contract? Do you remember?
We are going to move forward with,
Okay.
we've got good reviews, we got good responses from the seniors and from the users and the township that everything is working good, and the promises that we were made by the county for the services are being provided at the level that we were promised. So we don't anticipate that we would have any issues with them, and it would be very unlikely and very hard for the township to now revert back to our own service and then self-fund, so that's not very likely. So I feel comfortable with the meetings I've attended and everything, and what everyone else, I'm sure, the township knows that we would, NODA seems to be performing at the level that we had expected and asked them to, and that we don't see any reason why that would change. So it's pretty permanent,
Chair?
I would say.
I think, yeah, in the future, we are tied to NODA.
Yeah.
I mean, they're having legislation that could pass any second. The opt-out is gone, for Wayne County and Oakland County, so that's in our future. Let's just deal with it and take advantage of it the best we can. And it sounds like it's working.
Yeah.
I believe it is.
The next item was about including brownfield redevelopment information. Again, we felt that this was a matter of course. It would be new text to write, figure out where to put it, things like that. Just because it's done on a regular basis, we didn't feel like it was needed to be included.
Can I ask, maybe in the implementation matrix, a topic or an objective of a training session for the planning commission, what you guys do internally
Sure.
in that regard, so we're aware of it?
Matrix.
is it noted the availability of the option in the master plan? Just not the specifics of how it works, because that could be something that we would wanna be implementing on as part of the DDA as an incentive for, reinvestment in the corridor. So I don't want it to be absent from the master plan, but I don't know how much detail it needs to go in, but at least it should say that we participate and have a program. Is that in there?
Well, we use the county's program, but we use it as a tool. We tried with Dort Financial, for the theater property. They just didn't take advantage of it. So, but we connected them with the county brownfield coordinator who handles the whole process.
But Brian, is it at least noted in the master plan that that option, I think it's important, any incentive for revitalization that could be used in the township on old properties, I think at least the words, you know, what to ask you about the program, not how it works or all the details, just that it exists and that we participate, I think is important, to put incentives, at least in the master plan, that it's noted at least.
Maybe what we could do is on commercial, office, and industrial and land use, add an objective is to continue to use the Oakland County Brownfield redevelopment program as a regular tool to reuse
Perfect,
property.
just so that it's kinda out, you know, that it's out there.
And the matrix item of some training?
Yeah,
Or-
we can do that.
Okay, before we get off the county, that was it, no, the last item was 12.
The last item was 12.
And I like your suggestion.
Okay.
Why don't you run through it again real quick?
Yeah, so instead of putting in infrastructure, utilities, goals, and objectives, developing a multi-purpose stormwater management system, because that commits you to something, rather just put in the implementation matrix that you'll explore that. And then we would fill in the matrix as appropriately.
You guys good with that?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if I'm super clear on that, because I wasn't part of the discussion before. Explain to me what exactly you're saying right there.
So the county
Yeah,
had a very specific program, and if you look at their letter, it's about 2 paragraphs of what they wanted. And it seemed like it was something that they're encouraging all the different municipalities to do in order to take advantage of some programs that they're running and that money's available. And their specific suggestion was to put it in the goals and objectives and infrastructure. And what we're saying is when you put that in there, you're really saying that it's global and important, and you're really, as a township, making a commitment. Whereas this was the first that our firm had heard of it, Brian, the first you had heard of it. We didn't know what it all entails, and felt like it was more important, more appropriate in the implementation matrix, which says, this is what we're gonna do in year 1 to 5, this is who's responsible, this is, and then it goes back and says, you know, where on what page that links to then to put it in there as a placeholder to say, this is something the county said us,
Okay.
Independence Township, should explore.
so, and just because I don't understand, I've been focused on other things in the township.
Yeah, of
My
course.
first meeting,
Yeah.
just humor me for a second. Where does it address the fact that we have an interest in stormwater management, you know, things like, you know, so that's in there in a you know, that's important to us because we're, you know, this is a big dialogue now we're having with everyone, and that's because our stormwater management systems are aging, if not by, you know, pipe deterioration, by lack of capacity, you know, just naturally over time. So, just so that that's noticed in there somewhere, that's important to the township.
Yeah. So you do have an objective, and this is on page 32, develop a multi-purpose stormwater management system which reduces potential for localized flooding and enhances water quality. And then also support cooperative efforts to promote cost-effective development of utility infrastructure and efficient use of utilities. So I think those two things put a place marker, but then there's also in,
I guess what I'm looking more for is where does it say that there should be some sort of a maintenance or monitoring or verification, or that we would like that at some point to limit the risk of future failures because it's being neglected, you know, just something to say that we're conscious of the fact that, and, you know, the troublesome stuff for us is that the stormwater management is often regulated by the homeowners who run homeowners associations, who aren't engineers and who aren't monitoring anything, and who don't wanna spend their money on those things. So just the message that we're conscious of it, the management of it, cause what I fear is that we're gonna get to a point where these retention basins and stormwater management systems are eventually going to fail. Might be 20 years, you know, some of them are 30 years old, 40 years old. If we get to that point, we want to be able to have forewarned people that they need to be, you know, that's an important part of water management, and that they need to be responsible somehow to manage it so that we never have to intervene, that the county never has to intervene. And then they absorb those absorbent costs because we had to intervene. So, and Belinda, I've talked about this many times, but in that point, just so that the message is there, that you can't say, well, we didn't know, you know, kind of a thing. Is that in there? And I'm sorry, I apologize that I'm not so well versed on this version of the plan that I don't know where all the verbiage is. I just wanna make sure there's key points in there.
There is language in there about providing support for HOAs,
yes.
and a lot of that was centered around the kind of topic you're
Okay.
talking about there.
That's an objective in the
Yeah.
residential, and that was thanks to Planning Commissioner Billings.
The support is just,
Yeah,
Cause what you read didn't really address it,
I
those
think-
couple of lines, you know, in that.
yeah. I think what we could do is maybe on page 108, there's an infrastructure. There's a water management system. There's about 3 paragraphs. Maybe add a paragraph at the end to that, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, just capturing what you were saying.
You know, we wanna partner with them, that we wanna help them monitor, maintain, you know, we don't wanna get involved, but we could be a resource, for them to know, that what they need to know to make sure they're taking care of their stuff, so it's manageable, cause it's a lot cheaper to do it earlier than, post-failure.
I have a question on that page 32, that first bullet that says, develop a multi-purpose stormwater management system which reduces the potential for localized flooding and enhances water quality. Can we add on to that and say something about while also ensuring some kind of an agreement between the township and the landowner that the maintenance is a requirement?
Brian, is there something coming down the pipe from the county or state that's gonna start getting involved in stormwater? Didn't I hear something about that?
I haven't heard anything, and Jason, have you heard anything about that?
Some counties require like a storm maintenance agreement be entered into. I'm not aware that Oakland County has one.
Oh, they do. I've got a copy of it with me
Yeah,
tonight.
but for what we're doing, so what we've been doing for plan reviews within the township is we're making them put like a maintenance schedule for whatever their stormwater infrastructure is. But it's not an agreement that they're entering into with the township, but it's something that's being placed on the plans. It says if you have a detention basin, you should be inspecting it periodically, you know, mucking out the bottom,
Some
things like that. So
guidelines.
there is a schedule that's being entered into the plans, but it's not as formal as a recorded agreement.
Because I know Oakland County does have a recorded agreement that goes with the land. I mean, it's filed at the county. For instance, so that landowner B doesn't develop a property, sell it to landowner C, and then there's nothing to, I mean, you may have agreement with the first owner, but not the second owner. And in other words, that maintenance agreement would go with the land.
Yep, and there's a lot of communities are doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I think that's something we wanna work towards, but it doesn't necessarily be in the master plan. But I think the notation that monitorization and maintenance of it, with collaboration with the township, but no liability on the township. But somehow saying that we're interested in it, we're willing to help you with it, we see the importance in it. Just something like that, way,
Mr. Chair. But adding to that, while the township doesn't want to get involved in, I'm a part of this in another HOA thing where their stormwater management is just caving in. There should be some emphasis, I guess, from the township that is your responsibility, Mr. HOA. If it's in the master deed and you're a part of that, we're looking at you. We're not gonna take it over, but we're watching you. I don't know how to do that exactly, but, and then the other comment, maybe Megan, is on the utilities, that first statement there, develop a multi-purpose stormwater management, blah, blah, blah. There could be a little line in there to reference then the stormwater management system on page 108 to get you to that information, because they are linked and related, aren't they?
Yes, but, we haven't linked things to any other pages, but maybe just adding another objective to monitor and partner, with private landowners and organizations, to keep privately owned stormwater infrastructure maintained and functional.
I like that.
Yeah. To ensure, maybe.
Perfect.
That it remains functional, et cetera. I don't know, but I think it's, as, Sam brought up, this is gonna be a future problem, because the HOAs, I don't know what the solution is gonna be. They're not gonna be able to afford to redo these things. I know what it would take in my yard to redo the retention system that's in there. There's pipes coming in from two sides and then a leaching basin, and when all that fails, there's gonna be a lot of water out on the street or in somebody's yard or someplace.
Hopefully not their basement.
Hopefully not their basement. I don't know what the solution is, but it's gonna be a problem, and we need to look at it sort of and see how to fend it off, even if it's 10 years down the road or 15 years. It's happening. It's gonna happen.
Well, just as we're seeing all the roads in the neighborhoods wanting road improvements, stormwater is basically the same age, so it's at that time where that needs to be maintained, and likely HOAs of the past didn't even look at it.
Exactly.
Didn't even know. Or
Even
care.
though it's written, like in
Yeah.
ours, it's written into the master
So,
deed that
What,
it will be done, but they don't.
I think where the failure's coming is the homeowners associations that are managing themselves and not management companies, because I talked to a management company today that manages Oakhurst, for instance. Stormwater management and silt sediment removal is general maintenance. It doesn't require 51% of the vote. It doesn't require the neighborhood. It's part of maintenance. When you get to a neighborhood who doesn't have a lot of money, they want to all vote on whether to remove the sediment or not, which is the problem. Because I know that in Oakhurst, I just talked to them they just got done with their sediment removal program out of 7 ponds over there. So anything over 20 years, you should assume is not working as it should, and Jason can probably attest to that, okay? Whether you have weed control or not, there's muck. In Oakhurst, they just did their 7 ponds, and they gained 3 million gallons of capacity of retention at the end of their sediment removal for their subdivision. And we're not talking golf course drainage, we're talking impervious surface and stormwater for the residents. So they didn't ask the residents, do you want us to spend $800,000 on sediment removal? I mean, that's a huge subdivision, so it's magnified by 100. But the management company knew enough that it was a problem, scheduled it, planned for it, executed it, and is done. And that's where we're having our issue with the homeowner managed associations that don't understand the process and don't want to make the investment. So it's not everybody, but it's becoming more and more of an issue, and people are starting to realize that,
I think everyone would be surprised how many homeowner associations are having issues like that, really. if we, took a tally. I think there would be quite a few.
Well, we had the boom in the nineties, and we put in a lot of subdivisions, and we put in a lot of retention ponds, and all of those now have, don't meet that requirement anymore of retention, so it's a problem, but thank you for putting that in there.
All right, well, those were all the issues that I had flagged, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Before we go on to the other three agencies or departments that commented, I had two additional that don't relate to them. I believe, Megan, you and I, or maybe it was Dick and I, or the three of us, I think we had a conversation about putting the existing zoning map in the master plan and dividing that up by quadrant.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we had that.
I would like to see that.
Yeah. And then, for purposes of topic, this might be a touchy subject. Is it worth considering removing the reference to realignment of Big Lake Road from the master plan?
Might as well.
I'm for it.
Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
So I guess
Joe-
what would we base on the fact, what information would we use right now to assume that after we just went through that exercise and everybody came out with petitions and the residents in the area all decided that they weren't in favor of it, what are we using now as a basis to retain that goal? I guess that would be the question.
I would look to you, because I would look to the DDA, and you're on the DDA, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, to me,
What?
that would,
Well, it's
if they still want it.
It's outside of it's outside of our district.
Okay.
But, so we wouldn't be even considering investing money into it anyway, but even if we was in our district, it's an MDOT thing, it's not a township thing. I don't, from our meeting we had about it, because of the past petitioner, from other board members I've talked to, I don't know of anybody that is in favor of us instigating, trying to find funding, or promoting that alignment unless someone else did it at a higher level of government with their funding, but I'm under the understanding that we're not going to pursue that alignment in the future, so.
If you feel like you as the township wouldn't take that action, then you do not need to keep it in the master plan. Because, you essentially use the master plan as a tool to apply for grants or to talk to other agencies to put a marker down to say that this is what we'd like to do. So if you feel like that is not something that's realistic in the next 5 to 7 years, by all means, you could remove it.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we were close, not with the current property owner, with the previous one, it required MDOT, road commission, ultimately the property owner, our money and Springfield's money, to make that happen. And at that time, the property owner pulled the plug. So, bottom line is you need the property to make it happen, so.
I don't want it to be misleading, like I felt like it might have been to the last petitioner, that it's in there, and then they go through all this, and then we're like, no, we don't want it aligned, so I can't speak for the board, but from that meeting, and I think that if we were deciding that we should pull it out, and the board decides, no, let's keep it in, when we get to the final draft, they could add it again, might be the solution, but there wasn't any public support for it. There wasn't really any board support for it. Like Brian said, it would take almost an act of God to pull it off. And having it in there, I feel, could be deceiving or misleading to future petitioners investing in that part of the corridor that's not developed yet. So it might work against us, leaving it in there if it's not our intent. That's,
So I'm gonna conclude, unless anybody objects, that the direction is to take it out.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, but I just have a question. The point of realigning the road was to alleviate traffic congestion, right? Or why was it there? What was the original driving force of putting it there in the first place?
Well, that was always a tricky dangerous intersection,
Yeah.
so.
So is it not a
Due to the
tricky and
offset.
dangerous intersection?
Yeah, due to the offset plus the on-ramp of 75, there's just a lot
So-
going on there.
It's an act of God, right, to change it the way that it's stated, but is it still worth considering? Like, we still see the issue, the underlining reason for the project is still there. Is it there or is it not there? Is there, I mean,
I think from the board's perspective, at this point, I think there's not a lot of energy to make that happen.
okay. That's
Well,
clear too.
It sounded like the
right?
residents did
Falls
not
down.
want it to happen.
Yeah, that too.
From a safety perspective, driving that, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, the 99% of the accidents occur on the southbound exit of 75 there. As people are trying to turn left across the 5 lanes on Dixie to go north on Dixie. So that's actually where 99% of the accidents occur. And there's at least 1 or 2 there a month.
Is there
easily.
any other way to solve that issue other than doing this?
No, I think ultimately you need the property owner to work with in order to make this.
And ultimately, it's up to the county and the state, right?
But, and we have a piece of property that is in limbo that the person owns that doesn't know what to do with it. Is it gonna get, you don't wanna sell it, develop it, and then expect it to be, taking to align the, it's kinda messy.
And the property in question really is in Springfield. It's that piece
Right.
that we need.
It's not in our township.
Yeah, it's a very, very complicated situation, so.
Mr. Chair, I guess if you were gonna recommend taking it out, I absolutely support that. While the problem may still be there, the traffic problem, the accidents and whatnot, the solution is not the township. So if the solution is the county or the state, why do we have it in there?
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Okay, Joe, you wanna, just kinda summarize on the ROAC comments? You don't have to go each one, but just,
Well, I don't
The
really
flavor.
have a summary of it, a lot of it is just adding words here and taking words out of there. Probably one of the larger not issues, but, that they put in, well, the green infrastructure plan, they want some work on to include that in, and I think that's working okay. But, they also wanted to get in an oar in the water on the budgeting issue, and I think we're gonna take that up. There was some discussion, last night we
Yeah.
met on this, and there was some discussion about, putting the budgets in, and what we're gonna do is have the subcommittees each come up with a budget so that we could come up with a ROAC budget. But there was talk about of a naturalist, we needed a naturalist to do some work and all that, and I don't think that's a budgetary item for ROAC at all, personally. So I would steer away from any comments about that in the master plan, other than maybe if there was some support for having a naturalist, or sharing a naturalist, or funding a naturalist through some, contractual arrangement, that it really resides with, the control of it resides with maybe Parks and Rec or some other facility. It is not a ROAC kind of thing. At least that's, my thought. That was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that you understood. It was, kind of wish Dina was here tonight, but she isn't to go over that. But, the issue for me in there on the budget was to make sure that it was understood that we had no intention of ROAC putting money or requesting money for the budget to hire staff in the township to handle issues that, we may have some tangential reference to, but we're certainly not under control of. That's not our function at all. So, other than that, I don't have a whole lot of comments. It's pretty well clear. put this in, put that in, take that word out, take that word out. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to add to it, as a result of ROAC was, finding a way to put it in the implementation matrix, a way to incorporate the green infrastructure plan in our site plan reviews and take that into consideration. And maybe at some point, one of the duties of ROAC is they're trying to gather together an inventory of open space and rate it as far as, you know, a rating system for preservation and coming up with a map and, you know, maybe we'll get to the point where we can add that into the review process, things like that, so.
You know, on
Those are
top of
long.
that, yeah, that was, Dina, she is chair of one of our subcommittees, is working on that rating system, and it's a complex one, and she's using a lot of data from, I think, Birmingham, maybe Bloomfield, I'm not sure where she's getting a lot of it from. And eventually it's gonna be posted on, if we ever get to this one drive thing that, you know, we're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
get licensed to use here pretty soon, I think, in the township. She's planning on having a very complex matrix to rate every piece of open land, and I can't tell you all the points that she is planning on including, but she's gonna have this ready for a presentation to the board in March. You know, how they plan on approaching and rating the land for consideration of, by the township board, township administration, in whether you know, how to preserve it through easements, through purchasing, through grants, through, you know, just a lot of other things that are very murky and not our responsibility anyways. I mean, we're not writing grants or applying for grants to do things that, you know, that to preserve trees. That, you know, that's outside the scope and the boundaries of ROAC. Does it need to be done? Probably. Should we recommend it? Probably. Should we do it? No, because that's not what we're designed to do. So it's just a lot of discussion that needs to take place, and all these are good ideas, and I think what we ended up last night kind of saying in here is that one of the good things with some of this development of plans and budgets and whatnot and so forth is the cooperation, the integration of the ideas between different committees, commissions, administrations, and what. There's a lot more talking going on now than there has been in the past, and it's gotta be, you know, worth our while to do that, because that's how we solve these problems, because sometimes you don't even know there's a problem. And you know, you wouldn't know there's a problem sometime if we didn't say that there was one, and then all of a sudden, you know, it raises its ugly head, and, well, how come we didn't deal with this, you know, 6 months ago? You know, I'm just sort of making this up. The more we talk, the more we solve things before they become a problem, the more we help each other, and I think that's where we are on these suggestions here from ROAC.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding the ROAC feedback? I think the senior center and the Parks and Recs, a lot of consistency. A lot of it had to do with our aging population, how much the senior center has grown. I think you all probably saw some of the statistics in their response, and the extreme need for expanded facilities and as well as staffing support and stuff like that. And I think Megan's got some ideas on how to incorporate that. Also some talk about affordable housing for seniors, trying to incentivize that, putting the Stickney McCord property in the master plan. Talk about how our community stacks up as far as parks and recreation to other communities around us. And as Joe said, community engagement and action. And it kind of summarizes it. And again, I think Megan's got some ideas on how to incorporate that. Anybody else have anything to add on the Parks and Recs or Senior Center comments? Joe?
Yeah, I just like to, and I mentioned it last night, so you and I have heard it before, Tom has heard it before, but this, what Heidi has put into the Parks and Rec document here on the senior center and projecting, the needs as, of, what's this township gonna look like in 30 years? Is it gonna be in average age, 10 years younger, an average age of 30 years older? How are we gonna address those things? It's not maybe our responsibility, other than here's what our thinking is, but we're not building houses, that's not the township's job or anything like that. But I mentioned last night, this stuff is what we're talking about at the state level, with, and I did take this up to the Area Agency on Aging around here, at least the one I'm involved in, the 1B, and also the state's agency on area. I'm on that advisory committee, and I'm taking that up there too, and it's a matter of legislation coming along and then advocating for the legislation for seniors, which could go hand in hand with what we're working on in our master plan. It could, may not be at the moment, but it could go in that direction, which is just a cooperative thing. It's not, there's just, and I'll just end it right here. There's legislation right now going on now, it's not affecting the township, but for seniors, to go on guardianship legislation. They're promoting some things to tighten up guardians so that the guardians can't come in and steal money from seniors and put their names on bank accounts and all kinds of things. And there was some legislation that we worked on last year for direct care workers and increasing the salaries of direct care workers because there's not enough of them. This is at a state level, it's not a township level, but all of these issues go around seniors, and we are talking about them here in the township. We're talking about them at the state, we're talking about them in Area Agency on Aging. Where's the overlap? Where's the cooperation? If there is any, and if there is, we should take advantage of it somehow. And I have no solution to that. Megan does. I know she's just itching to solve all of our problems here.
I think we can add some things in there, and I think also alignment with the Parks and Rec plan. In terms of accessing grants, having these sort of things discussed in the Parks and Rec plan is much more important than having it in the master plan, because if any of it is coming from the Department of Natural Resources as part of their grant programs, if it's not in your Parks and Rec plan, they're not gonna fund it. So for expanding the senior center, then that's the most important document to have it in.
Yeah.
But we'll look at the Parks and Rec plan, we'll align it, and we'll add.
Could I ask you one question?
Incorporate these comments in.
I'm not pursuing it at the moment, but Tree Cities, you've heard of the Tree Cities, right?
Mhm.
And is there some advantage to us to get involved with that in terms of grants and different projects? And well, think about it anyways. I'm not
Yeah.
saying put it in a master plan.
I will ask our landscape architect in our office who does all our parks and recreation planning, and he also works in trails, tree preservation. I'll ask him about that and get back to you.
Okay, because there could be some linkage here or some overlap that we might be able to take advantage of.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Megan,
Sorry.
next step is what?
Next step is in January, we would make changes. We'd probably bring that back to you at your February meeting. At that point in time, you would make a recommendation to Township Board, and then Township Board is the approving body.
So no need for more public hearings?
Nope,
Okay.
this is the last stop unless you choose to have another one for public engagement.
So being optimistic, we could, maybe in March, get a final approval from the Township Board.
Yes.
Okay. Any final comments from the commission? Okay, let's move on. Next item is G2, now G1. PC file 2024-010, Chris Terry at 5799 South Main Street. This is a final site plan approval request to allow the applicant to construct 2 buildings in the existing Trillium Village at Sashaba and Maybe.
Maybe
I-
in Dixie, sorry.
You're right, thank you. Megan, I think your review is fairly clean. You can comment on anything that you feel needs elaboration, but it looks to me like it's pretty clean. Jason, your letter looks like it's pretty much all stuff that can be addressed at, in the next stages, in engineering and all that, and
Yeah.
if you disagree with that,
There's a couple items that maybe we wanted to point out and get some additional information today on, but
okay. Megan, do you see a need to elaborate?
The only thing I wanted to bring to the planning commission's attention is that the applicant did receive a side yard variance. And then, if you had any questions about the parking dimensions that were mentioned, I can elaborate further on that, but essentially, they have enough room, and they're in the same layout as the original development, and now with the variance that is legal.
Sam?
I didn't get any information in my package except for Jason's report. So there's no elevations, there's no landscaping, there's no blueprints, there's no, in the packet. I referred back to the meeting in October, so I went back and saw October, I saw some sketches of a building, and the architecture. I watched the video you guys watched. But the package, maybe I came and picked up the hard copy, I got your package, or Keith Engineering's package, from the engineering. Is there more to the package, or was that what you got, I was at the other meeting, so I don't know what all information you got, but I would say, being new to the commission again, that if you had information that was given to you at the preliminaries and other, whatever, that it should carry to every meeting, not refer back to, last October's paperwork and then try to look up what file that was, because did I get a bad email? Did anybody get blueprints and,
It's not in the agenda packet that's online either.
okay.
I think we did see blueprints, I thought we saw.
Yeah, we submitted, so
layout.
I got the conceptual site plan approval pending the variance and then the few things that they wanted to see from Keefe Engineering and the master deed, which I think everybody has, where it establishes how everything is laid out. So, from my understanding was, this was basically, I had to come back with the variance and all the questions that you guys had, and I believe we addressed all of those.
And I
so.
guess my question would be to Brian, when he was at the ZBA, did you have the blueprints and all of that, or were you dealing with just dimensional variances?
No, we had a full packet at CBA.
Okay. So, I guess my question is, I'm gonna be forthright with you. I'm the person that pushed for the 70-yard setback because of Walden Village having two-story apartments that were originally 40 feet from the neighboring property, and the two-story balconies could look right into their backyard. So I was pushing for 100-foot from multifamily to residential to protect the backyards of those people. The planning commission settled at 70 feet. That's how the ordinance changed between the time that Jim had it and the time you bought it. The township agreed that 70 feet was a little bit more realistic because of the invasion of, let's say, looking into the thing. And the reason I'm asking this is because not in my package, but I did go back and see the architectural stuff you submitted for conceptual, and I don't know if that's what you're sticking with, the contemporary version. And I went back to see that deliberately because I wanted to see if the way the configuration of the buildings and the design of the building would allow the second floor tenants to look in the backyard of the neighboring properties that are only 56 feet away. Now, on the existing buildings and architecture, the sides of each patio is blocked by a structural brick wall, and they can only see straight out from their patio. So when you turn the buildings the way you have them on, you know, the way that it was designed, the buildings aren't looking into the people's backyards. They're looking off on an angle, they're looking different directions. So having a balcony that you can't see off the sides made that line of sight into the backyards of the people adjacent residential properties from the second floor harder to see into their backyard, because you were forced to look on that angle, not right in their backyard. So the design of the building, I think, way back in the day, took some of that into account, and why they're not like a building directly straight with everyone's backyard, and you're just looking in their backyard, which was the case across the street, which is what drove that dialogue to push them back, to protect the privacy of the residents who were existing. Reason I'm bringing that up is because I don't have it in this package, but in the package you submitted originally, and that's why I asked Brian if it went to the ZBA, is because you have some sort of rooftop activity area. And that would definitely go against the intent of why we not only made it 70 feet, you know, but the invasion of those neighbors, and that, and the, that's why it was so important to find out if the ZBA knew that that roof, you know, if they put focus on the rooftop part, because that's my, that's what, I can't get past that. I'm not
I understand
opposed
your
to the
concern.
buildings, I'm not opposed to anything,
Yeah.
but for you to come in and put somebody 20-some feet in the air, 50 feet away from somebody's backyard, looking in their backyard, I can't go for that.
Well, can
So-
comment that the rear of the building is 70-some feet? It is forced on an angle, and the trees there are very mature, and they're taller than what the building is now. You weren't at that meeting, but I brought some drone shots to show. I'm sure you've probably drove through there, you're familiar with the site. And
Yeah, I was there today.
Yeah, and you can see how, you know, and I believe that every neighbor also had the right to come up here and speak if, and, you know, it did go out to
Yeah.
everybody, within the whole 25 acres of that complex, so it reached.
I agree with you.
a lot
I'm
of
just telling
people.
you that there's, having the rooftop feature,
And it won't be the full
It-
rooftop neither.
I've never even heard of that being something in a township that we've ever even allowed such a thing, to have living space that high up in the air.
This is the first development that's proposed it, and there are no regulations in the zoning ordinance, that speak to it.
So I would, have to say right off the bat that I would never be able to support a project that has rooftop living space that's adjacent to residential property.
What would require is living space, like, I mean,
Just being able to go up there, period.
actively to just,
I mean, just being able to go up there, period, because I was, all of the the reason we moved it to 75 feet, whether or not the ZBA gave you a variance or not, was to protect that aerial invasion of the people. Now, if you go there right now, it's one single row of trees with no leaves on it, you know what I mean?
there's quite a bit of pine trees
And you're
there.
not, if you're standing on the roof of a two-story building, there isn't, you know? And I'm just not understanding why you didn't stick with the original design of the buildings. I know you want something more modern, but to take it to that next level where you're literally, what is the height of the finished floor of the roof?
I know we had our building official look at the calculations of it, to ensure first that it's a two-story building,
Correct.
and then, look at the architecture.
So less than 27 feet? Because there's no mean height, right, because it's a flat roof?
Yeah, but they're still a median.
Pardon?
There's still a median, yeah, no, it has the.
Well, it's supposed to be halfway up the peak of the roof, but
Yeah.
no peak, so what's, you know.
There's the elevator shaft and then the stair shaft, that would be considered part of that, I would say, the roof. And, as she said, there is no ordinance or anything saying otherwise.
Well, no.
How-
the-
How How strong of an issue is that for you to have a rooftop deck?
I think that it's a very good use for that space. It's not like, you know, it's limited, there's a limited amount of people that will be able to access it. It's not gonna be the whole roof, that's kind of how it's shown, but it's, you know, I won't be the first person, I'll tell you that presents it, and I feel strongly about it. I think it's a beautiful setting back there, and it kind of just
Okay.
captures the scenery, and
Okay.
I just, you know, even accessing the roof and cleaning it I feel like it's safer alone. I mean, you have a flat roof, I don't see what the difference between somebody going up the roof hatch and a mechanical guy being on the roof, or the gutter guy, or somebody cleaning it, the maintenance man. I mean, there's people on these flat roofs every single day.
Yeah, but you're making it an entertainment center where people are up there partying on a roof,
I don't.
overlooking a neighborhood. And
And what makes you,
So-
how are you gonna say they're partying? I think that's a very bold
Well,
statement.
it's an apartment, and you're not living there, and there's nobody monitoring them unless the police come, so let's just be honest about, none of us can say how well it's gonna be, people are going to act on the roof, you know? But I just feel like the zoning board has already allowed the building to get closer than the township has agreed it should be to a residential property with a second floor balcony, okay? Now we're going another floor above the second floor balcony, because that's at the second level. Now we're going to the third level. So now we have people on the third story of the building, closer to residential property than is allowed by ordinance. And now we're being asked, is that okay to go one more floor higher and be closer to the people than what's allowed? I'm not opposed to the variance. I think the buildings can be there the way that they can be there, but this is what's happening, is that and not you, a lot of petitioners, we're giving variances, we're making concessions, and then we're being asked to go even farther than what the concession is.
Yeah.
And that's what the board has made statements at meetings and talked about things, that's not our intent. Our intent is to try to stick to the ordinances and stick to what's there. Now, there may not be an ordinance saying you can't be on top of a 3-story roof as a common area, but that doesn't mean that.
2 stories.
Okay, but to me, the second story is the person's apartment. The third story is the roof entertainment area. So however we want to word it. I just feel that's a complete invasion of those residents that we're supposed to be protecting. We're already allowing the building to be closer. We're already allowing the patios to have 3-sided views towards those residential homes that aren't available if we were building the same blueprint and floor plan of the existing structures that were originally approved, because they can't see sideways off the patio. So there's a big list of concessions being made, but there's not a big list of protections being put into place, in my opinion.
I think Sam makes a good point. He was granted a variance, and I do think that the rooftop function, where you can have entertainment, you can have noise, you can have a higher line of sight, aggravates the situation that a side or rear yard setback is supposed to mitigate. So I think he makes a good point. That's basically it, right?
The rear
To
of the
say
building
that there's
is-
been a rash of developers in multifamily units encroaching on setbacks, though, is just incorrect. This is, in 10 years, this is the first case, and the reason it was approved, because it's a previously approved development on the exact pads of the previous development. I mean, the only unit that's closer than 50 feet is the end unit in each building. So if there, according to your argument, if it's 70 feet away, it's good. If it's 50 feet away, it's bad. So, so if we don't have rooftop on the N2 units, then all of a sudden it's okay. There's holes in that argument, I guess. And the biggest hole is that developers are rushing to get multi-units closer to the property line, because that's just not the case.
Well,
And what is the list of concessions, I'd like to ask? Because you said you've already given, you were giving me a list of concessions that you guys have, I don't see. The only thing was the variance, and as everything else is to the T. So the original project was 2.5 stories, which was there. I'm going down to the 2 stories. I didn't ask for that. I'm just trying to finish the development that was originally started. I didn't create this issue. It was there. And so if you want me to eliminate that front where it's 50 feet and make sure that there's nothing there, I'll go on file saying that there's nothing there. If you're saying that, and for you to say that there's partying or like the demographic that I'm going after with these buildings is not gonna be, they're not gonna be partying.
You don't get
and-
to discriminate against who you
I
rent to.
don't, but, and then for you to say that there's no oversight, like, there will be a lot of oversight. I mean, I live here, I live in this
Well,
town. I'm
In
gonna
all
be
fairness,
over-
we have to deal with the land use, not the owner. Owners can change. So we can't rely on your good faith.
I understand that,
So-
but to say that there's not gonna, I just feel like that's a bold statement to say and to put out there when you don't, you're just speaking on whatever your personal, feeling
Okay,
or.
well,
But for you to say that, just, that's like, you're just putting things out there, that's.
If you were developing this if you came to us and said, I want to finish this development as approved, and you built the buildings that were approved, and all you needed was a variance because the setbacks changed, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But you're not building what was approved, you're building something totally different than what was approved in the same location that the last development was approved. There's a big difference between
Well,
the buildings that are there, that are made of brick, that have a pitched roof, that have private balconies, that can only see out one side of them, than this building here. And I'm willing to work with you on the building, but I'm not, I think it's a complete invasion of the privacy, and it goes against everything that we worked for to allow people to be 3 stories high,
can,
within 100 feet. Even when we had the ordinance change from 40 to 70, okay, it was never having anyone above 10, 12 feet in the air, which is the first floor of the second floor unit. That's where you would be standing, 10, 12 feet in the air, not 25 feet in the air or 22 feet in the air. That was not, if that was the case, when we were talking about changing the setback to 40 to 70, that we were gonna allow people to be now 3 stories high adjacent to residential, I would have been fighting for 150 or 200 feet away from the property line. That was not what we were, that's not what the intent was. The intent was 70 feet standing on the floor of a second floor, which is approximately 10 to 12 feet off the ground. So this is completely different than,
Well,
Hey,
Vista
what-
Springs
can
has
I-
a rooftop deck.
excuse me.
Vista
Well, now
Springs
you're
is
speaking
back
to
there.
what 7 people's internal intent was in their own mind. That, I would just rephrase that's your opinion.
all right, so let's give somebody else, other planning commissions, members an opportunity to pipe in here. Do you have a problem with the rooftop, or are you okay with it? That's,
From my
Okay,
side,
I would make
I
one
don't think
comment.
this is this might be a way to maybe find a compromise, right? If this is kind of a no go, maybe there's a way that we could put a wall up there. There's gotta be a wall if you're gonna be there anyway, right? How high is the wall?
42 inches is the parapet, can't be
So
higher than
maybe
parapet wall.
And Brian, I don't know if there's a way you could put, page 260 up, maybe we could see from,
And the 12-unit building is 100 feet away. Vista Spring is over there as well. They have a rooftop over top of they have a rooftop deck on a portion of their building, which is in this same development here.
so, let me use my pen here. This is the unit that we're discussing, I think, right?
the 2 of them now.
Correct.
And this one too.
Yes.
Yep. So what, oh, yeah, better. Rather than saying you can or you can't, maybe there's a way that you can extend that wall higher here.
I don't have to put
Maybe even-
anything on that whole side of that building. I could do it on the other side, just have it air, but I'm gonna have access to it anyways, to clean the roof drains, to inspect the roof, get up there, all that, you know, it just seems.
That's not the concern, we're cool with that.
I understand that, but I'm saying, so like, all of that is already there, so.
Are
I'm
you
already-
willing to limit access to that half of the building, of the rooftop,
Just a maintenance
so
or
that your
something.
tenants or owners cannot access it?
Or just, you know.
Yeah,
with the
however we
design to
could
keep
word
it
that, but I
private.
can't say you can't cause we'll have to, I can't build a wall up there to divide it, cause then, you know, I don't believe, then I'm gonna be going outside of my height restrictions and everything else, so. But I can make it to where it's not, there's not gonna be a rooftop deck, there'll be rubber pads, you know, to walkable to access the areas.
What
There
about
could be a-
screening?
there
And
could
when
be a
you're
pic-
up there, and same when you're looking at that building, looking up, you can't see. If somebody's up there and they're looking up, they can't see. And, you know, I could pull up the drone shots, you know, again as well, and even with them looking down in their yards.
You're gonna have a wall around the whole perimeter of the roof to prevent people from falling
Correct.
off.
Yep.
So instead of extending that wall all the way from one side to the other, can't you just wrap it halfway down,
With a door, gate, something?
that's locked and
Yeah,
only
with a
available for
gate.
maintenance people?
Right, gate would potentially work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can limit access, you know, and it's hard for me just to tell you what right now, cause it's gotta look, you know, aesthetically, right, pleasing, and then it also has to
Understood.
meet the ordinance.
All right.
Maybe some
other-
type of screening.
Belinda?
Maybe some type of screening.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, like some sort of screen, whatever it is, right? And then,
That would prevent
Maybe
them
there's-
from seeing
maybe
into the
there's,
backyards and the
you know,
other.
compromise.
I don't know.
You're, I guess what
Yeah.
they're looking for is
We gave them
clarification, there's not
compromise.
rooftop deck on the whole building,
No,
correct?
no, it's not gonna be on the,
So-
it's
so
a,
what
it's a
there's-
very big building, I'm talking
need
like,
to see
you
the
know, it's
detail.
14,000 square feet, I'm talking maybe 1,000 square foot, just an area, I mean, there's 18 residents, they're not all gonna be up there at the same time.
So with what the
It's-
chair was saying, that will be located ideally more centralized on the building and with parapets or gates around it, so everyday owners can't just traipse around the whole roof. In layman terms, correct, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can do that, I mean, I plan
For
on
our
having cameras,
satisfaction?
key card access, that certain people won't have access to certain areas, I mean, that's not an
For our
issue.
satisfaction, I think that needs to be documented somehow. We can't just,
Maybe more
as much as
detail.
we'd love to take your word for it, we can't
Yeah.
just accept that.
Yeah.
It's gotta be documented.
Well, can we, I mean, is there,
Well, we're not gonna
Slippery
figure
slope.
out here how to document that.
well, are we gonna
Brian, do we even have an ordinance for this? Cause now this is, you're really going down a whole nother road here in the township. We've got height variance, height restrictions, and now you're talking about
Habitable
rooftop,
space.
huh?
It's basically habitable space on the rooftop, so.
which is a very common
well,
thing, may not
it's
be.
Well,
common
in cities maybe.
Yeah, in cities in
Or
California.
if you were doing it where the
Right.
Trillium Village, where the senior center is, it wouldn't be an issue. You're surrounded by commercial. You're adjacent to someone's backyard for rentals
So
to
that's
have
what
a
I'm
view
saying is
into their yard. I
We
mean,
could
Okay.
cut that half off of there, this half that faces the residential, the rear is already 70 feet,
Right.
which meets the zoning. I mean,
Megan, did you have something to add?
Mr. Chair, I would see the commission probably has three options to pursue at this time. One, it sounds like all of you are, with the building as it is and the items submitted, that possibly a majority of you could support this going forward without the rooftop decks. So you could have it as that you would give you would approve this with the condition that there's no rooftop decks. It seemed like also some of you were looking for a compromise that only the interior portion of the rooftop would be where an area of the rooftop deck could be. It would be up to you to determine whether that would need to come back for your review or whether that was something that could be handled
Building permit.
as at an administrative with the building permit. Or you could simply postpone it and ask the applicant to respond to this.
Thank you. I wanna get back to the fact that the current submission, we don't have building plans or landscape plans. Give me a minute here. It seems like it's awkward for us to give final approval when we don't have a full set of plans. We could, if we so wanted, I would imagine, I'm asking the questions, could we condition an approval to the full set of plans that were included in the October submission?
I haven't seen them.
I'm not saying we're willing to do that, if the commission's willing to do that. So, my point is, if we don't like the fact that we don't have a full set of plans here, there is a way to get around that, if we're comfortable.
I think
Okay?
if we do decide
That's
to
not the only issue.
have some sort of modification to the roof, we're gonna wanna look at it anyway, so
Yes.
we're gonna have to come back with those.
Can I ask a few questions
Sure.
about the roof? And I'm gonna try to work with you,
Yeah, I
okay?
gotcha.
But this is, I'm protecting the residents.
And I'm a resident,
I know, but you
respect
don't
that.
live below somebody that's
And-
on a roof above your building, so, but here's my thing. What about, because I would feel more comfortable if you're gonna have people on the roof that they can't get near the edge of the roof. Okay, so even if it was confined to the center of the roof or the one side, and I personally, I don't wanna make concessions. I don't think the board wants to make concessions. I think that that's a problem that the township's having, is we're making too many concessions, okay? But since there is no ordinance on it, I'm willing to talk about it, and then maybe we'll come up with a way to control it in the future. And I know you got an investment, and I don't wanna slow you down, but having access to the edge adds a lot of liability, a lot of dangerous stuff. I don't know how we know who's on the roof. Is it a swipe card? So at 10:01 to 3:09, tenant number 28 was up there and threw a bottle of beer off the roof, or his buddy stopped by, or, you can't say what's gonna happen. You're 2.5 stories up in the air. If you're near a roof, the potential of overseeing people, seeing people walking in and out of the building, seeing cars below, throwing crap off the roof, adds to liability. And I don't wanna be part of that liability. That's not our business, having rooftop activity. If there was a way on that big of a square foot that you could contain your area from the elevator pad off the edges of the roof, say 5, 6, 10 feet, cause it's 14,000
Yeah,
square
sure.
feet. So you could entertain with your 42-inch parapet walls and nice couches and trees and patio heaters or whatever, I could see the need for it if it wasn't abused. But not near the edges, not near where you're looking
Yeah.
down off the end of the building. So line of sight of the living space, if we were gonna start writing ordinances, just hypothetically, I would say, the barriers on the roof need to be where line of sight of a 6-foot, 4-person would not clear the corner of the roof line to see down into adjacent properties. With your roof that big, I think that
I don't think
we
that's a
could find a
problem.
compromise that would
Okay.
meet that type of criteria. You know what I'm saying? So that, yes, you're up there, but the invasion part has been eliminated. The risk of dropping water balloons or more dangerous things over the edge on people's been eliminated. Spying on people coming in and out of the building is eliminated, and yet a
I'm very-
activity
Yeah,
space could still be pretty big. Is your elevators in the middle? Close?
Sam, if I may,
Yeah.
I think we get your gist.
Okay,
I don't think this is the place to design it for him.
all right.
It strikes me that if we're so moved, we could grant some form of approval and maybe condition it on us seeing a final roof plan or something like that.
that's something that I would be willing, I would
Okay.
like to entertain, because this has been,
Yeah.
drug out for a long time as it
Understood.
is. And during the conception, if I would have
Okay.
gotten this feedback when I got the conceptual site plan
Okay.
approval, I would have addressed it and we would have been ready for this.
Understood.
And,
All right, if I may, I don't mean to cut you
No,
off,
you're good.
but I want to move along.
yeah,
I've got some other issues, and maybe other people too, so I'd like to have an opportunity to get those on the table too, okay? My issue is the bridge on the pond, one of mine. Your plan shows it there under your existing conditions, and it shows it there as part of the proposed site plan. I cannot find anything that indicates that you will rebuild that bridge. So I would like to put it on the applicant to rebuild the collapsed bridge. And if anybody makes a motion, I would like that to be included as a condition. It does reference the fire, or Jason's comments reference the fire marshal's letter, and particularly regarding sprinklers. So we need to make sure we reference that. It says something to the effect that all the units need to be sprinkled, correct, Jason?
We wouldn't make that determination, we were just asking the question.
But
Fire
you
protection.
deferred to the fire marshal.
We
The
would
fire
defer to the
marshal
fire
said
marshal
that,
for their
yes.
opinion on that, yep.
And then I have a problem, I thank you for submitting the master deed, I read it. It appears that it does cover cost sharing and all the things that I was concerned with. It does give the township the ability to step in if needed and force and do the maintenance themselves if it gets bad enough. I realize there's issues there and what would trigger that and all that, but it gives us the ability, and it gives us the ability to tax the owners of the property. Tax may not be the right word, but
Assess.
effectively.
Assess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot find any reference in the master deed to the clubhouse. And I am very concerned about who's allowed, where is it specified, who gets to have use of it, and how the cost and maintenance of that happens. And my concern is, under our property maintenance codes, the township can again step in and, to the best of my knowledge, and force maintenance and assess the owners. But unlike a single ownership property, we know who the owner is to go to. If, in this case, we would go to the HOA. And if the HOA has no document that spells out their right to collect from owners and what percentage, that's gonna be a quagmire.
I believe it's in there. It says everybody is what their portion is. There's
I-
133.
It says all that, but I could find no reference to the clubhouse, none.
Does it
And
just refer to common areas? Because,
you could
I think it was a
assume,
unit back in the day,
you could assume that
separate unit.
it's part of the common area, but
Is that like a maintenance guy's unit or something?
No,
That's
it's a condo, yeah. So first, and I respect what you guys are saying, and I want to get to the bottom of this as well. Like, I didn't create this development. It's been there for 20-some years, right?
It's an apartment.
There is a unit above it, which is a condominium. That's unit 133. That's the 100 and,
yes.
out of the 133. Below it is the clubhouse. And I will have to go, if you give me a moment, I can go through here, but everything is pretty well spelled out is of the common area elements, so everybody in there has access to it. The seniors
But where does it say that?
have access to it.
Okay, again, I would love to take your word for it, but you might not be here in 5 years.
I understand that. I don't see what that has to really do. On page 6. I don't understand what that really has to do with like what the two sites that, this is, Oakland County approved it. I mean, Independence, it says right in the first thing, Independence Township has
There it is.
accepted it and approved
community
it.
building on page 6.
It is in there?
Mhm.
Did I miss it?
Community building, pool, and related amenities.
Everything in
That's
here,
why-
down to the boulder walls, to
When I
the
printed, skip page 6.
to the electrical disconnects, everything is very, this master deed has been very well thought out. Literally,
I read it
the boulder walls, the disconnect, the patio blocks, which belong to each, everything, if you read through this, every single item that is attached to the building or that is in this site is clearly shows whose responsibility it is and what the
It's a
percentage is
general
going to
common
be.
element. Here.
Thank you. And I apologize, my printer, for some reason, it goes right from page 5 to page 7.
Page 6.
Bill, can I ask you a question?
Somebody else say something, let me just take a
I
look.
wanna ask you a question on that point. On, how long, so the place has fallen somewhat into disrepair because of lack of investment, lack
Correct.
of people, get it?
Correct.
Understand. What do you think, when do you think do you think by you building your units, and how long from that point do you think that the pot will be big enough to really knock out all these loose ends and clean the thing up, you know, because it's a matter of accumulation of dues to reinvest.
My
Yeah.
plan is to invest into the site right away, and I believe that, Vista Springs would also like to get this place looking a little bit nicer. And between the two of us, I'm 30, they're 54, that's 84. I believe what it is currently is the residents back there was 25 of them. And until 2020, they supported that whole community. Vista Springs didn't get completed until close to 2020, right?
Right, yep.
So those 25 people didn't want to vote on, they didn't want to spend $1. They didn't want their
Right.
dues to go up. They're still, and to your, about why didn't you build the same, like, those units never sold. The original owner still owns some of them. They've had a hard time back there. And that's the reason why that development has sat for over 20 years. It was for sale for years. I mean, years and years, this property's been up for sale, and nobody has.
And since I'm new, can you tell me what the plan is for the final, is there a final phase after your buildings, or is that all, that's it, that's the end of
The
that?
final phase is to address the 24 unit property.
that
And
one.
at that point, it's
Over-
different though, because it's more workable. The parking's not in, there's more room to move things, there's more rooms to make it nice. So, you know, I mean, I took it upon myself, so the bridge falling apart, I put off the caution tape and all that. I mean, that should have been addressed by somebody a long time ago, like, so, you know, and now I'm personally liable, so I don't care if the 24 want to pay for it or not, and of course you can't take what but like, even Vista's, like, that deck needs to be protected, that's a liability, and for I'm not gonna say the top, but somebody should have been more on top of that, and it should never got to that point. Somebody
Agreed.
should have enforced their card and
It's
said,
clear-
hey, this needs to be taken
Clearly
care of.
says that was an HOA responsibility, but.
Yeah, so.
And if you wanna go back to them and say, hey, I'll split the costs with you, that's between you and them.
Yeah, no,
But I
I'm
wanna
willing
know
to
it's
take
gonna
that
get
responsibility if you say, hey, you know, I want you, because that's one of the first things I'm going to do. I don't own that. I don't own that, but I'm definitely gonna address that because I don't want nobody, falling or getting hurt or, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So, you got a management company running Trillium,
Yep.
right? Are they running the apartments too, or the condos? or-
Yes, right now, so I imagine you said you spoke, so they run,
Yeah, I spoke to Amanda.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so Amanda's running that whole thing right now.
Is
She's,
she gonna be running your building?
she's getting it into play and we haven't gotten that far yet, you know.
And that's where we're kind of a concern, you know, with a multi-faceted project, are you gonna be under one association management company?
We are for all common areas, absolutely, right? So like that, the sidewalks in front of me, the roadways, everything's gonna be plowed, all that's going to be done.
Right.
So the only thing is, you know, the grass that needs to be
Right. Who
cut.
manages the management company? So Trillium clearly brought in somebody
Yeah.
to handle the property, which would be Amanda.
Yep.
Then you got the condos. Are
Yep.
they on board? Is she also managing their property or just the common area? Like who?
She is
So-
managing their property from my understanding, but again, I'm not.
So you've got the common area that's managed by the same people?
Yep,
Who hires those people?
the board of
Everybody?
Trillium Village.
Of Trillium, but not of your
Yeah,
apartments and not
so-
of the condos?
Wait, no, of the condos. So the condos are, that whole thing is Trillium. It's
Okay,
all
the whole thing's
condominium.
Trillium, all right.
The whole thing is Trillium
Okay.
Village. If you read the master deed, the whole
Okay.
thing is Trillium
So
Village.
they're hiring the management company for the common area, and are you at their mercy to go with who they decide? Because,
Correct, well, I mean, I have my votes. you know?
But will you have more votes then than they will at any point, that you would pick the management company?
Vista Springs is gonna have,
Always have more?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then if, and I'm just trying to figure, you know, because we're always worried about who, when you got multi-facets, them fighting over, they're not doing their share, you know, so we try to get everything, just like a PUD, under one control.
Correct.
Person under control.
And that's, and if you read the master deed, it is in there, and it does
Right,
state
and
how
are
it's
you-
all 133.
Has the
in
pool ever been open?
You're, I don't know.
Don't know.
I don't know. I can't answer that question because I haven't been part of this until, you know,
I heard a tale that you might be using the clubhouse as your sales office, is that?
a leasing center. So
Yeah,
I
as
would
a
like,
leasing
I
center?
would like to, because the clubhouse now is, I don't know if it's not been used.
Functioning, yeah.
Yes, and it's just going to cost more money the longer they neglect it. So
Right.
my proposal is, let me, fix it up, make it nice and clean, and then, yeah, I could use it as a
sales
pre-leasing office during construction, and then when it's done, everybody can use it, and it'll be,
Okay.
but currently, it's locked, and nobody's using it, and there's spider webs and bugs and,
No
you
issues
know.
with it, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to get a picture of, the collaboration and.
Yeah, I
and
want
all
to
of
work
that.
with them and make it better, and it sounds like everybody else does as well. It sounds like Vista Spring wants to be, get this thing up to par, you know, there's been a lot of, just lack of energy put into that project for a long time.
Okay.
Going back to the way the bylaws address the clubhouse, so what Belinda pointed out is strictly the definition. I still could not find anything in there that talks about who gets to use it, who shares the cost. And typically, in a condominium bylaws, the clubhouse would be broken out. Do you have an attorney you're working with on this
For-
project?
No,
It is a general common element,
yeah,
so it's available to all if it's general, not limited.
I just find it odd that it doesn't spell it out. I mean, it spells out the sidewalks under the definition of general common elements. Why doesn't it spell out the clubhouse?
Or the pool.
Yeah.
I believe the pool is in there, I'd have to go,
I-
but again, there's nothing that I can,
Have you
there's
already
nothing
bought-
that I can do about this, though.
Have you already bought the property?
Yes. I bought the property because it was advertised as site plan approved. And we had a conversation and until, you know, it shouldn't have lost site plan approval, I guess, after 1 year of no construction, which I think they finished up 2020, so maybe so this was reapproved in 2016, this whole thing. And
All
then, again, this master deed was amended, approved. At that time, Independence Township reviewed it. I'm not sure exactly who, but they got reassessed as the one tax ID. I understand everything that you guys are saying up here, and a lot of it is just information that I can't give you because it's from
Okay.
20 years ago.
Okay.
And we can't change that. I can change the way that I can offer more funding and finish this building like it needs to, the project like it needs to be, but
Well, bylaws can be changed, but I
Oh.
appreciate what you're saying.
I do see something on page 6, the one you're missing. Community building, pool, and related amenities are common,
Does it say they're common elements?
yeah,
Or is it
direct,
just
general common elements under section 1.
All right, I'll let it go. We got sidetracked. Megan, you wanna go back to your, anything you wanna add to your review letter?
No, it's just the variance and then the issue of the rooftop decks were brought up, so those were the two things that
I have something.
really.
Well, Jason, did you wanna?
So just a couple of items here. I think the one was, the plans call out the detention basin, there's a wetland line shown. I don't think your report took the stance that that was a wetland. We just kind of raised the issue that if it was, some additional permitting and review may be required there, but I think if it's strictly a detention pond, I wouldn't take the stance that it's a wetland.
Yeah.
The other stormwater item to point out is that when this property was originally developed, the county requirements were for a 10-year detention pond. Okay, the current proposal, I don't believe is gonna be large enough to trigger the full force of the county ordinance for you to bring that area into compliance. But if the future phase that we were talking about comes into effect, between what you're proposing now and a future phase would be large enough, so it would be looked at retroactively. So if you don't trigger it today, by doing something in the future, it may, and then we would have to account for this proposal plus the future one to bring those areas in compliance with the stormwater requirements.
Yeah, I currently do not own the 24, so I have no
But
say.
even
or-
regardless,
I
it's
got,
all-
I get what you're saying,
it's all
yeah.
one property, so
So
if
keep that,
if
yeah,
that
no, I
develops,
got
when
it.
it does, we're gonna include the area that's being disturbed as part of this project, and those will have to be brought into compliance with the current standards for 100-year storm pre-treat and all that. So there may be some expansions to that pond required in the future.
I got a
Oh,
question
Belinda
about
wanted to
that.
go first.
Okay, well,
Sam.
about
Oh, you got
his
about
point.
that? All right.
Sam,
Just
go
on you, so Jason, in that situation, and he's not part of the 24, Trillium's not part of it, but whoever develops that part of it, the cost of compliance is gonna be general common area.
Correct, yeah, so that would be.
So somebody else
enforced across
coming
that.
in there could dump a huge amount of money on you. Since it's not
Correct.
condos and you own it, it's gonna be on you and Trillium, and is that, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah,
because
of-
he needs to be,
Aware of that.
yeah, and how big are we talking
So it
to?
would be just the areas that were disturbed. So the county ordinance has some provisions that you don't have to go and fix the entire site, but anything that's been disturbed since that was in effect would need to be brought in compliance. And by doing just under the threshold in one project and just under the threshold in another project doesn't fly. Those two projects would be combined and you would exceed the threshold.
I guess my question is though, is what if the other building gets built, are we gonna be talking about, we need to have more retention in the pond? We
Yeah.
need to have sediment removal, we need to have, at which point does the project get, since it's 20 years old, which point does the project get to be fresh again, or meet all the, does it ever go back to like as if it was built brand new? And it's not bad against him, because he's gonna get stuck with all these
Yeah.
costs if we have failures, so I think it's fair to,
And it says that in here, I'm
It's-
clear, I'm fully aware of all
it's
of
fair to
yeah.
express the risk if you kind of, what's involved.
So I don't, between this development and what's left for the future, it wouldn't enforce bringing the entire site into compliance. It would be only the areas that are disturbed as part of those two projects.
So we never get it back in compliance.
Unless we, disturb 75% of this property, we're not gonna be putting in a 100-year storm for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Belinda, you wanted to say something?
Well, the last time, when you came before us, one of the conditions was that we would have a maintenance agreement. All I see in here is Aquaweed contract, which is between you and the vendor. A maintenance agreement should be between the township and the landowner for the stormwater detention pond.
For the pond maintenance agreement, you're saying?
Right. Stormwater
Yeah, I don't,
infrastructure.
the township engineering standards don't require a maintenance agreement. That's why we have been asking for them to put maintenance provisions on their plans, but there is not currently a township ordinance or engineering standard that requires them to enter into a maintenance agreement with the township.
Okay, there may not be anything currently, but we did do a preliminary approval last time, conditioned upon a maintenance agreement, simply because there's so many HOAs that don't take care. So it was conditioned upon a maintenance agreement between the landowner and the township.
It didn't clearly state that, it said that the pond maintenance agreement be established, so it didn't say between the township, and that's why, you've seen the pond maintenance agreement, it's been maintained, there's a management company, it's been there for 20 years.
I know, it looks much nicer than mine, I can tell you that. But let me be the devil's advocate. Let's say you get this built and, 2 years down the road, you sell it to somebody else. I know you're not planning that right now, but let's just say you're selling it to somebody else 2 years down the road. If we don't have some kind of agreement with the township to say, this is the schedule of what you're gonna do to maintain this stormwater detention pond, we have no teeth. I mean, because I know that because my HOA bylaws also state that the HOA will maintain our pond, and they don't. So, and the township has not stepped in. I would like to see something further between the landowner and the township to say, this is what we'll do every year.
Well, as you said, this does say too, the township and the county can step in at any point, and
Yeah,
and
this
for
is a
you.
may. It
Okay,
says a
so
may.
same, I mean, if that's not, if you don't enter an agreement with the township, it's not required, I don't see how that applies to what we have here. If it's not a requirement, what makes it a special requirement?
Well, I don't know why it's not a requirement, because it is in Oakland County. I have one of their maintenance agreements here, a sample of one, so I don't know why we're not requiring that. I mean, in our preliminary review, we did ask for a maintenance agreement. So that contract with Aquaweed is not a maintenance agreement, in my opinion, because that can be canceled at any time.
Anybody else got comments? What's the pleasure of the commission here?
Mr. Chairman, just, I gotta go back to this. Is there a requirement for one, and did we stipulate that? Was that a condition, or we can't just drop this? Somebody's gotta say, nope, ignore it, or yes, we have one, or.
Brian, can you pull up the minutes from that meeting?
Meanwhile, I gotta take a potty break.
Okay, and Grace, can I give you this? This is from Oakland County. It's for new subdivisions, but this is a major, so why does that not apply?
So I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, but I think that's something we can definitely look into.
And I'm just gonna say, I'm all on your side. I know it sounds like I'm not. I would love to see Trillium Village be, thriving, and it's a shame that it's sat there for 20 years. I just wanna know that 20 years from now, that things are maintained.
And I agree, and it's gonna be easier to be maintained when there's revenue being created as
I
well,
agree.
correct? And,
Well-
and again, like, and so my recall is that you said pond maintenance agreement, so, I mean, he's gonna check right now, but if these issues were addressed before the I was already given conceptual site plan approval pending the variance in these items. If these things were addressed the first time around, I would have, we could have, so alls I ask is, even if we have stipulations, is that we push this and do it administratively, so we can move forward with structural drawings and get more, in depth with what needs to be done.
Brian, I can't read that from here. Can you read it?
Yeah, basically, Commissioner Galley moved, Chris Terry, to approve the request for conceptual site plan approval in order to construct 2 buildings in the existing Trillium Village of Clarkston development with all of the comments of the planning commission, notes and comments from the staff and consultants, and zoning board of appeals approval for the side yard setback variance due to a change in the zoning by the planning commission. The petitioner at the next meeting will provide a brief summary of the breakdown of the shared cost for the condominium association and any relevant documents that would be helpful in the commission understanding that.
Because I remember Ron Ritchie asking you, Brian, is that the new code? And you said, well, yes. And he said, well, we should make sure that it's in there. So maybe we'd have to go back and listen to the video, I don't know, but sometimes though, whoever's doing the minutes doesn't put it's not word for word.
So the comment of you could just cancel your contract with Aquaweed at any time, of course, is true. You could cancel any of your contracts at any time, depending on what the contract says. If you file a maintenance schedule, you could just choose not to follow your own maintenance schedule, and the township and the county have to step in anyways, correct?
Correct, I think it's the same difference, basically. I mean, it's for the township to enforce this, and I'm not saying anybody, but the current state that it is in, and is a lot to do with somebody not stepping in and enforcing it.
I guess here's what I'm thinking. In my situation, the township says we don't get involved in HOA. So if you have an agreement, just a separate maintenance agreement with the township that says, this is what my schedule's gonna be. I'm gonna treat the pond this month, I'm gonna have it checked to see, if the silt needs to be removed. Whatever your schedule is, if you have something agreed to with the township.
I have no problem doing that. I have no problem doing that on, if that can be handled on the administrative side, like after this, but to table this for another 30 days, if I would have.
Megan?
So in talking with Jason, one of the things that you could do is ask that the maintenance schedule be put on the site plan. And the site plan then you would approve, and that's a binding document. So if it wasn't followed, then the township has the ability to go and enforce it.
I
And
like
it's
it.
binding to subsequent property owners.
Yeah, because
And that
it's
would
the
carry
site plan.
over to the engineering plans too.
I
Yes.
would really appreciate that.
And I don't,
Sam?
it's not really, you're not the pond keeper,
No.
or he's not running the association.
Right.
So what we're asking for is, in my opinion, is what the township needs to do to get ourselves in order to start putting protections and mechanisms in place for the future failures of these ponds, to motivate the owners, to start maintaining them before they're catastrophically failed, and then we're forced to step in, or the county's forced to step in and absorb an amount and fix them for them. So
Exactly.
that's more of a educational enforcement thing that doesn't lie the burden on this particular guy, but it does on the property. So
Right.
if anything comforts me, it's that I happen to know that the person managing this property manages Oakhurst, who is conscious enough to know that the pond's 20 years old. It's got too much sediment in it. It needs to be maintained. And if a quality management company stays the management company, they're gonna address the needs of the pond. Our bigger issue is when you don't have a good management company, or you have residents managing their own pond. So, and it's not your burden, because you're not the pond keeper. You're not in charge of common areas. You're just paying someone to be in charge of common areas, so that, we're all in line with where I think we need to go, because I started building homes in this township in the early 90s, and all the retention ponds that we put in are not doing what they're supposed to do anymore, hence Spring Lake, which was the first sub I built in the 90s. They just they just removed their silt, so it's just becoming an issue, and we're just conscious that we know we're trying to protect people from a failure, because once it fails, it's not a $20,000 sediment removal, it's a $200,000 catastrophic failure, and hauling the stuff off and bleed, you know what I mean? And then all of you get stuck with that bill. So we're doing this really as a safeguard for future
So-
landowners that are blanketed under homeowners associations who aren't maintaining their property. So that's kind of, where we're coming
Yeah, I
from. And I
fully
understand
understand
it's not your burden,
Yeah.
but
But I'm
talking to
willing to
Jason.
take on that, I'm taking on a lot of that burden, that's why I feel like there's a
Well-
lot of, and it's like, this project needs, somebody to speak for it, and it hasn't for a long time. Because the current 24 owners, I feel, are just only worried about, let my dues not go up.
Yeah.
Don't let my dues go up. Instead of, it's gonna cost you I've been in the industry a long time, preventative maintenance goes a long ways, right? So I'm going to, urge them to invest in it, and it's between, I think, me and Vista Springs, we're gonna get a lot more done now. And, yeah, and Amanda has a very good plan, like you said, she knows what, she knows what she's doing, and they're gonna whip that place into shape. They've done a lot in the last year that they've been there, and
Right.
Sam, to summarize, you're saying you don't see a need to put the maintenance schedule on the plans, you're okay with the
And
the
I'm not
agreement?
saying we shouldn't put it on there, but I'm saying it should just be noted, noting it's fine, and that there needs to be a plan. I don't know how defined it needs to be, but it's kind of a catch-22. We wanna
Well,
put
and
a
I
little
think-
bit of protection in place for you, but we need to, as a planning commission and a township, work a little bit more on how we're going to orchestrate that. Now, I did talk to Amanda, who is a certified manager of community assets and property, and she manages thousands of units, and she did tell me that she would be willing to come in and sit down with us and, for free, and have a meeting, and just give us her perspective of how they're handling it, how they're managing their storms, who they're using to check for sediment, not engineering companies. They send a diver down, they find out the difference between solid ground and the stuff, they do a calculation, it's a lot less expensive than some of the numbers, Belinda, that you were getting doing your thing. I think that's where we need to go, not to burden him or this meeting with it, but, we're all aware that I think we need to be more conscious of it because the ponds are aging out, and we, you know, and
Okay,
we
but
know
I'm
that. That's
Trying to get to a point of being specific about how we get on beyond this point.
Mhm.
What do we do in an approval?
One more comment.
Yeah,
I think it will help you too, if it's on the plans, because that way, your homeowners that are saying, don't let my dues go up, I mean, I hear that all the time. You're gonna say the township is requiring, I mean, you can, you know, there's a document that is an agreement between the owner and the township.
Yeah, I have no problem with there being a pond. I tend to maintenance the pond. So if you want that on the, if we can do that on the back end of things, like, approve it, and it's with this being attached to the site plan, I have no problem.
Does it,
go ahead, Jason.
I was gonna say, so there's currently 2 different owners and potentially a third. So what we're gonna ask this owner is to take the burden of the entire site by putting it on his site plan, because the other owners might say, hey, you signed for it. So I'm just saying that might not make a whole lot of sense legally, even though I think you might be willing to do that, please consider, you're now speaking for the HOA that you're not representing,
You're right, I appreciate that,
So-
Jason. That's a very good point there.
What about, Belinda, would you be happy if, and this may be a wacky idea, but just the plan said something about he would do his best efforts to make sure the HOA maintains a knowledgeable pond management company?
No,
Okay.
it needs to be an agreement between the township and the landowner. And
Which again, I respect what you're saying, but if that is not an ordinance and if that is not a rule, that is your personal,
I agree.
I feel like that is a lot to put on this board to go against you.
It is in the ordinance, though, if you look at what I just gave him.
Well, Belinda, just to, if we were approving the Trillium Village development, I think that would be more than appropriate and really hammer them to build this development and have those commitments. But he can't, I don't see how his agreement would, he's only a piece of the pie. He doesn't, he doesn't control the sediment of the other parts, he doesn't control the pond. I mean, as much as I want to do it with you, he's just not the guy, because he doesn't own the pond. He's not responsible for what goes into the other pipes from the pond. What you're talking about is a policy that we need to work with Brian on, and as somebody who does this type of work and initiate a policy for future projects going forward, how we want to address future maintenance of any new, in my opinion, in any new development. As much as I'd like to retroactive do it,
Yeah.
I don't think it's appropriate for,
Okay.
to do it.
I think we have a flavor of where everybody stands, so I would ask somebody to make a motion, please.
I have a question on how to handle one item. We were all kind of bantering around and we kind of left it hanging. Would it be appropriate to do a 3-person subcommittee to work with Brian on construction drawings for the potential decks? Or, whoever wanted to view those? Or do we go with Sam's language that, I don't know if that's appropriate to take your comments from the meeting because they were, a 6'4" person can't see over the ledge, which seems reasonable.
I think it's
And the
subcommittee.
petitioner agreed to it.
Yeah, I can make it to where there's no line of, it's a big, I'm not gonna do the whole rough, right? But,
Subcommittee, okay.
yeah, I can make it to where there's no line of sight from,
It was more how do we motion for it, not necessarily how you're gonna do it, so.
I thought it was gonna come back to us. I mean, his approval would be contingent upon us seeing plans for the roof. Is that not what?
That
To
was
the
a
full commission, you
suggestion.
could be on the committee if you wanted to.
That was a suggestion. I think that's one way of doing it. I think subcommittee's another.
My only point would be for me to be on board is that I don't think you should be able to see the people on the roof, and the people on the roof should not be able to see the people on the ground. I think that's a compromise that takes a lot of safety and privacy and other issues
I,
off the table, you know?
perfect.
Okay.
I agree with that.
All right.
I would be one to be on a subcommittee for that, if it requires, if you think it requires that.
I'm gonna make a motion to get this thing moving. To grant final site plan approval for PC file 2024 to allow the applicant to construct 2 new buildings on the existing Trillium Village. The approval is subject to the comments of Nowak and Frost, the fire marshal's comments of his letter dated 10/24, the applicant agreeing to rebuild the bridge over the pond, and the establishment of a subcommittee to review revised plans for the rooftop deck in accordance with general comments made here at this meeting. That's the end of my motion, unless somebody has something they want to add.
If there's no discussion, I'll support the motion.
I just want clarification from addition, are you cool with the bridge thing?
Yeah, I have no, that's what, I should have already fixed it, to be honest with you,
Okay.
but now I can tell them that, hey, this is, you know, and yeah, no, I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'm good with it. It's a liability for everybody there. I can't believe it's been like that, so not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add, Belinda, I'm sorry I didn't include anything on the maintenance. I sympathize with your position, but I also sympathize that he's not the sole property owner here. And I'm not sure it's fair to burden him with it.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yeah.
clarification. The purpose of the subcommittee is to, just in general now,
Review revised plans for the rooftop deck.
okay? And if there's, the subcommittee's gonna revise the plans?
As worded, it would be my anticipation they have full approval, full authority to approve revised rooftop deck plans. Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. They're, in other words, they're not gonna design the, okay, so that you're gonna have to come back to this committee with a revised,
From the subcommittee, so the roof is the deck just sits on pedestals, it's, yeah, so like, it's not.
I'm just trying to get the approval
Yes.
process, not
Yes,
the
yes,
technical, what
correct.
it
So
looks
like, yeah, no, we can approve it, and then with that subcommittee, I'll resubmit the deck, and I'll show that where the line of sight and all of that, and everything that was commented
I-
today, and your remarks when I get the report.
I think as I envision it, he would probably work with Brian and
Yeah.
the consultant to design it. And when they think it meets something that meets our desires, they'll call up the subcommittee and ask for a meeting.
Yeah, and basically, we've done this before on other projects, so essentially, the subcommittee signs off on it, and then it's done.
Can I ask a question?
and I can't imagine it not working. But if the subcommittee does not sign off on it, then what happens?
Well, he's gonna have to revise it based on their comments. Yeah.
Okay, but
until-
is it continued development all during this time, and
Like, could be, I mean.
Has to meet,
I'm just asking.
It's
he's
sub-
gotta
Subcommittee's
get us
not
to
happy
approve
with
it,
it.
or he ain't getting a rooftop.
Yeah, exactly, right? But the
It's-
buildings
it's
are-
subcommittee's not happy, he's gonna have to fix
Very
it.
motivating.
But
Yeah.
theoretically, he could continue on with the engineering process,
Yeah.
which takes
Get the
6 to
job
12
going.
months
Takes
or
months,
something like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
So he can continue on, but he's not gonna get his building permit until we sign off on the plan.
Okay,
Okay. Sam, you had a comment?
he's
I
not
did, and only
gonna get
because
his
I
building.
didn't get
Wait
a
a minute.
complete set of plans, and I typically would be not even in favor
Oh.
of moving forward without everything. I just wanna make sure that what the building materials, who's approving the building materials, because I watched the video and you had mentioned, we don't allow vinyl siding on commercial buildings in the township
Anymore? 'Cause-
anymore.
Okay, yeah,
And it's
because,
been decades since we did.
okay.
Okay, so
It's gotta be
we've
done.
literally lost multi-million-dollar projects, Liberty House,
Yeah,
that wanted to convert to vinyl,
Yeah.
and they bailed over siding.
crazy.
So I'm
Sam,
just making sure.
You reminded me, thank you. I'll amend my motion to include the various building plans that were included in the October package, and you'll have to approve that.
Yeah, I still support chair's motion.
Okay,
With the amendment.
that's all.
Yeah.
I know you
No,
said composite and
yeah, it's
everything, I
very-
just wanted to be
yeah,
clear.
they're
So-
very
I-
good
I
materials.
called them out on it.
Yeah, and so did Dan, the Z,
Well,
yeah.
he said, well, I could have done vinyl, and I'm at home going, no, you can't.
Yeah, well, I just, that's what was on everything else.
Okay.
I know,
including this
I know.
third, so, yeah.
I know, we just don't do that anymore.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, let's do a roll call.
Sam Morocco,
Sure.
Jason Borsheim,
Yes?
Brian Galley,
Yes.
Bill Scarborough.
Yes,
Tom Patel.
Yes.
Belinda Billings, yes.
Yes.
Joe Sucher.
Thank you,
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, that one done. Next item is the 2025 Planning Commission schedule, meeting schedule. Any comments? I think it's pretty,
Going on in
easy.
2025.
we can add to this with special meetings, this is just the regular monthly meeting.
Is it a certain, is it the second?
Second, all of them are the second.
Second
and then
Thursday?
Just kinda, we always do the pencil in the fourth in case somebody wants a special meeting. You don't have to put it on your calendar, just think about that.
Just don't make any other plans for that day.
Make a motion to approve the 2025 Planning Commission meeting schedule.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's done. Next item is approval of the minutes. I have a number of corrections, but I'll give everybody else any opportunity to note any first. Okay. Page one, bottom, very last paragraph. Ms. Mason Minnock summarized her review of the request for the planning commission to decide for a planning, I think it's supposed to read a planning, oh no, I'm sorry. Commission to decide if this is a minor or major. Second sentence, the applicant is planning on resurfacing. I think it should read, the applicant is proposing a resurfacing parts of the elevation.
Which page is that?
Very first page of the minutes, right at the bottom, last paragraph. Second sentence in that paragraph. The applicant is proposing resurfacing, just take out is planning on,
Okay.
okay? Next page. You ready, Brian?
Yep.
Middle paragraph, Bill Assemi, I hope I didn't butcher it. That paragraph, it starts with that. Second sentence, there was a comment that said that they would be ruining the building if they were take off the building additions, because that is not true. I think it should read they'd be ruining the building if they were to take off the building, semicolon, that is not true. They're just mostly minor grammatical. You ready, Brian?
Yep.
Page 4, first paragraph. The sentence, sort of in the middle of that, it starts, Commissioner Ritchie stated at one point he was scared, and Mr. Assemi wants to make it clear that they should not be scared. I don't recall any discussion about anybody being scared, so I think it should come out.
I missed that part of the meeting.
Huh?
I didn't see that part of the meeting where you guys were scared.
Okay, page 6.
Got it.
The paragraph, 4 or 5 down starts Commissioner Billings. Second sentence, she asked that it would sense to come in.
It would make sense.
Makes sense. Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Page 9, middle of the sentence, the reference to site ephes, white ephes. Right, almost smack dab in the middle. Now, the first paragraph at the top.
Oh, yeah.
Next page, page 10, third item down, starts out Miss Mason Minnock. Right at the end there, other properties on Sashaba have gone this route.
Yeah.
Got it, Brian?
Where is it at on the
Oh,
page?
man, I flipped that page. third item down,
Okay,
the paragraph starts, Miss Mason Minnick,
yeah.
right at the end, have gone this route.
Oh.
Okay, next one is page 12, fifth up from the bottom, I think it's the fifth, where it says the township board approved. The township board did not approve the recommended amendments by ROAC, they reviewed them. So it should read township board reviewed. Fifth item up from the bottom, starts Chairman Scarborough stated.
Okay.
Got it? And, sorry folks, that's it.
Sorry.
Did you say township board reviewed?
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't approve it.
Yeah.
I make the motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes of November 14th, 24 with Mr. Scarborough's changes.
I'm gonna recuse myself because I wasn't here.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no, none, and Sam is abstained. Consultants report. Megan, you got anything for us?
No, not tonight.
Jason?
Not tonight.
Okay. Discussion, I had a couple things, but I'll give everybody else a chance first. Yes, Belinda.
I would like to ask Brian, I would first like to say I'm very thankful that you give us the site plan and the big print. I appreciate that. But I would really like the township to bear the cost and the expense of printing the entire package. Because I printed it this time, it's 289 pages. That's more than half a ream of paper. And my ink is so expensive. I would appreciate it if the township would give us this package, not with the duplication of all the site plan, but all the verbiage. I would appreciate, I could pick it up at the same time that I pick up the site plan.
I'll have to discuss that with the supervisor's office.
Thank you.
I think it was, we looked at printers at, in our office, and I think it was like 70, was it 70 cents a page or something like this? If you do a laser printer, it'd come out to something like that. So it is a substantial cost, so it makes sense your question, your comment.
I just, to give Brian some ammunition, just like to get the rest of the opinions, commission's opinion on that. Brian, it seems like you think it makes sense.
My eyesight still works, and I use my computer for most everything, so I would not require that, but
And I wouldn't say to do it for everyone, but
Yeah.
for the ones that would like, I mean, I just like paper and I like to make comments and have stickies and,
yeah.
I mean, when I first started on the planning commission, we got full packets and we went away from it and I didn't notice a difference. I actually like digital a bit better, I think. But I just wound up with gobs and gobs of paper going into the fire pit at the end of the day,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, when I started, it was on stone tablets. But,
And did you make your notes on that?
I did. I did. When I started, Brian used to bring them to my house.
Uh-huh.
So they used to deliver them to your house with the packet. I think that anything that a planning commissioner needs to do their job effectively, that the township has the resources to provide. I personally don't mind reading the paper documents online, but I certainly can't efficiently read blueprints online. So I still would like a paper copy of the blueprint. I don't need the pages printed, but I think that anything we would do to hinder a thorough
Agree.
thing, I think Belinda brings a lot to the table. If she can do a better job for the township having paper and she's the only one or two people, I wouldn't be opposed to that. And not every planning commission packet's hundreds of printed pages always either, you know. You're talking about a master plan, which there's no reason we should be printing copies of the master plan for everybody, for every meeting. But I certainly am not opposed to, if you think that would make it better for you and you're like the only one or two, I'm good with it.
Joe?
was always in favor of getting some printed material, but I'm thinking that maybe it would be helpful to me if, but it could be very limited to, you know, the engineering reports and your consultant reports. In printed, you know, in hard copy form, not the entire document at all. But, you know, in this particular case, I think it was 8 pages out of 289, but, you know, maybe when the PDF for the packet is prepared, they just pull out, you know, those year reports. I think yours was 3 pages or something like that. It's just much handier for me, you know, because I can't sit down at a PC and just, you know, stare at it. My eyes aren't that good. And cataracts turn yellow and green and pink and purple and whatnot. But, you know, but I'm not interested in 289 pages of printed anything, but just working documents, like you can put notes on, you know, Megan's report and notes on yours, which had lots of notes on them. That would be very helpful to me.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else got anything?
Comments?
Yeah, discussion, yeah.
Oh, but I just
Joe,
got a
you
comment.
got something?
Maybe, you know, I don't mind printing out 8 pages either, you know, but I do have a little tough time going through 289 and trying to figure out which one and then telling the print program, I only want this page and that page. So maybe if it was just a separate PDF rather than paper of just their reports. Now, it may be easier to make copies, hard copies, than it would be a separate PDF, but
I can
think
sort
about,
something
just
out.
think about that, you know.
Figure it out.
I'll sort something out.
Okay, Brian, did you, you passed out the sign posting proposed amendment and the ROAC
Yes.
proposed amendments? So they were at your, we will, excuse me, discuss those next month. And particularly with the sign posting amendment, hopefully be ready to, depending on if we have significant changes, be ready to set a public hearing for that. The ROAC one, I'm torn on how to proceed on that, and we can discuss it next week. Just give you or next month, food for thought, because this PUD review committee is in place, and I hope to have our first meeting in January, and that may result in some major to significant changes in the PUD ordinance. And so I don't know if we should incorporate them all into one, because that might take a good 6 months, or if we should move forward with the stuff ROAC recommended. So we'll discuss that next month. The sign amendment, I gave Brian some feedback. It was recommended that it be posted 15 days before, and I questioned if it should be longer. We questioned back and forth via email. And then my final question was, well, does statute really apply? Because it doesn't really require us to post, or to have them post a sign. So are we bound by what statute requires?
No, I think we were talking about 15 versus 30 days, and the problem with 30 days is the submittal deadline is 21 days in advance. So 30 days, I mean, that we don't know if they're submitting or not.
True.
Well,
I mean, I think 15 days is more than enough
So
time.
you're talking about what we talked about, putting a sign up saying this property is proposed for rezoning, contact the township if you're interested, and it's only 15 days you're thinking? Cause that's not a lot of, that's not a lot of time, you know? I understand your submittal thing, but I think there's a way that, besides the investment, they're gonna make the sign, they're gonna get it printed, they're gonna get it installed. Is it always that fast that we're only, so I know that we had more than 15 days when we were thinking about, you know, they were gonna do a PUD, or we're thinking about changing a different, you know, characteristic part of the township to something different, like, I'm gonna segue into my next comment with this, so my discussions with, watching you guys, what we found out about, going through the Red Barn project, the master plan aligning with the underlying zoning, all of those things. I think that a township-initiated rezoning, which I hope that we're gonna start moving forward at an accelerated rate for parcels that could become a problem for us in the near future, there's no reason to wait, we should move forward with that, can be posted months in advance.
Yeah.
While we're working, or a month, you know what I mean? If we're gonna initiate a rezoning, then the township's going to put the sign up. Is how I would expect it, that we have an issue, that we're gonna do it, so. Talking with other, trustees and just, at that just listening to what they're saying at that meeting, that we're gonna need to figure this out with our desire to align our underlying zoning with the master plan. Those parcels that we're going to need to identify, and I hope that that's on the next agenda, talking about the ones that are the most critical, the ones that are most desirable, the ones that we're more vulnerable, that people are coming into that particular corridor, or whatever, that we should do those first. And that we should then, we should have a policy for township-initiated rezonings should be put in a minimum of 30 days, signs should be put up a minimum of 30 days before the public hearing, so that it allows the surrounding residents, because we can determine that timeline. Although I'd like to expedite it as fast as possible, I don't think it's fair for us to come to, say, we're gonna just throw it on an agenda, we're gonna do a township-initiated rezoning in 15 days. It doesn't work like that, you know what I mean? Megan, you
It's a
probably.
process, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
It's a process,
But-
but we've done it here.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I've been part of it before. We just, I think there's nothing wrong with being transparent and letting people know our intent. Now, whether it happens or not, it doesn't happen until after we have public, we go through all the rigmarole, but I feel like we're vulnerable letting this sit around and not cleaning up these loose ends, because every day another person comes in and it's still underlying zoning is this, you know what I'm saying?
Let's not go into that yet. Let's stay
Okay,
on the-
but, so I think that we could have two things. We could have, what's reasonable to require a petitioner asking for a rezoning? Or is it a policy just that the township does it sooner? Like what do you know?
I would suggest that if the township's gonna initiate a rezoning and you want the township to have different rules than a petitioner, to make that a township policy rather than to put it in the zoning ordinance. Because
Right.
there might be circumstances that change, and as you know, it's a process to change the zoning ordinance. In terms of the 21-day versus 15-day window, one of the things I would ask you to keep in mind when you're looking at this in the following month is that when a petition comes in, it may not necessarily be complete. So at the 21 days, one of the things that your staff does is evaluates whether it's complete and then makes a decision about whether it to be noticed or not. And then that 15 days is due to state law, but usually I expect, Brian, you have to have at least a week lead time because of the
essentially-
publication.
Yeah, publication with the Clarkson News basically puts me at 21 days.
So let me ask you this, if a petitioner comes in and says, I wanna initiate I want a rezoning request, would a PUD be considered a rezoning request if they were gonna come in and ask for a PUD?
It
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Why
it's
can't
specific.
our ordinance say that all rezoning requests will be heard 30 or 60 days from the date of the request in order to allow us adequate time for notification?
You could expand that window, so it could say 30 days, and you can put that in the ordinance, or you can make it a township
See,
policy.
and the thing with PUDs is a little different
Right.
because we have the pre-app meeting and there's no notice for the preliminary PUD, it only is for the finals. So that's a little different. The more I hear the discussion, if somebody just comes in and says, I wanna rezone this parcel from, residential to commercial, they're gonna submit 21 days at least in advance, And at that point, they should just submit the temporary sign permit to put the sign in the ground. You know, I mean, I don't see why they just don't turn it in with the application.
But what if then it takes them like a week or 10 days for the print, you know, the guy to
I know, well,
get the
that's,
sign, and, you know what I mean?
that's the technicalities of this that are still a little,
Like when I
Plus-
rezoned my building to make it in compliance, I had, office service in my retail store, which didn't make sense, so I, came and said, I wanna change it to commercial, so it makes sense to the use, you know, cause it was office service when it was a Napa Auto Parts store, you know, in the fifties, so it didn't make any sense.
yeah.
But then you could have said, that's fine, but you gotta put this sign up for 30 days before we can set the public hearing, or before you can go up in front of the board, like, is that something like that we could do, or is that a little, like, you said we could extend the,
You could
Yeah,
ex-
we'll push it out.
you could extend the window, but that should be the same as whatever your submittal deadline is. So if your submittal deadline is 30 days, then give them 25 days to put this, that the sign has to be 25 days up before. It's cleaner to do it the 15 days because that matches the state law, but there's nothing to say that you can't have it be expanded. Also, I don't know whether you've talked about this, but I work with at least 2 communities who do have signs for, both of them have signs for variances. Anything that requires a public hearing, they put the signs up, but the township or the city provides the signs. So, and there are snipe signs, you know, and they usually have a QR code that goes directly to the township's website, so that then somebody,
and it's paid out of the escrow of the petitioner.
It'd have to be.
Right,
Yeah.
It would have to
It'd have
be.
to be.
so that would be something that the township would take on the expense, however, then you know that it's uniform.
In
Well,
today's
well-
technology, it's pretty easy to have that document, shoot it over to the shop, and a sign's created in a day, you know?
I like the idea of a QR code, because one of the questions I had on the date of the hearing is, those can change, those can get extended. You know, so if you had a QR code on the sign, they could go right there and see when the hearing is. or
And
when it's-
usually what it is it's to either the zoning board of appeals page or the planning commission's page, and that,
To the agenda or
and then that would link to the agenda. You might have to put something on there to say, this, you know, this, for more information about this address, click here.
Or postponed,
Well,
or taken off the agenda, right?
yeah,
Like we just went through that, we posted it about the
yeah.
parcel on Dixie, you got all the people like ready to come. Some of the people I know were here for that in the audience, because I know they live down, you know, just happen to know they live in, you know, would've got a notice for it. But then they don't know it was canceled,
Yeah.
you know, so,
So-
the-
I didn't intend that it be special land use or ZBA, but we can discuss that next month after everybody has a chance to read it and get in a little more detail. I'm not opposed to it. Okay, any other discussion on that item?
One last thing, because I felt like this got kind of kicked down the road, but I heard from various people tonight that we should change our ordinance or whatever for existing subdivisions or communities that have ponds that need maintenance. When can we actually put something together to discuss those communities? Instead of saying the township doesn't get involved. The township needs to get involved.
Yes, I think if there's support, I think we need to have a meeting to go through
Yeah,
the current
we've
standards.
had a couple meetings between Department of Public Works, ourselves, about modifying all the engineering design standards. They all need a revamp. You know, full disclosure, we do inspect stormwater now on installation, so, on top of water and sewer, so, but
Good.
that needs to be put in an ordinance.
Can you put that on the agenda for next month?
Yeah, I mean, it's an engineering design standard change, so it's really outside of planning commission, but, cause it's in the general code.
But we
Right.
could still be involved in getting it done, right?
Yeah, sure.
who would typically make those changes, Brian? Would it be in-house staff and supervisor and building and
It's-
planning and engineering, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's really the engineering Department of Public Works ultimately, because there's, standard sheets, standard detail sheets and things that we need to get cleaned up and things like that. So it's mostly between engineering and Department of Public Works, and then we're just the enforcement agency of all that.
So the part about getting, I don't know if you had any opinions about bringing in somebody that, just from the perspective of an HO, of a management company on that side that does it, that what are their how do they perform and do it, I think is a valuable resource, because we can, and the reason I say that is that when I had talked to the manager, the property manager over there, and she's like, well, I have a guy that's a lot cheaper to use. I have resources that, that are in Clarkston that we use, that we don't get involved in that. So those aren't the people that we do business with, but we could turn them on to the homeowners associations. We could be an asset, we could, we could be a resource for them. I know this gal's super smart about it. She manages thousands of properties, and she's been through it a bunch of times. And I kept trying to get more, I didn't have enough time to talk about just, like, how do you sell it to the resident? How do you get it done? When do you know when to go check for the sediment, and my issue is, see, everybody looks at the ponds as if it's got weeds, or it's got this, the weed control's great, but all that's doing is limiting the amount of sediment from the the weeds going in there. It's not solving the problem because you're controlling weeds. It does stop the sediment, but decaying animals, leaves, debris, it's gonna fill up with stuff, no matter
Well,
what
even the
no
weeds.
matter what you do, you know what I
Even the weeds, when
mean?
you kill them, it becomes part of that rock.
And my concern is that it doesn't matter that the pipe is exposed. It doesn't matter that when it rains, water goes out the pipe. My concern is, in 20 years of designing these, that let's just use Oakhurst as an example. 20 years ago, their ponds held 3 million more gallons of water before it got to the discharge pipe, and then went down the Sashabaw Drain, went down the Shiawassee, went down, wherever it goes, into Deer Lake, you know what I'm saying? And that's what's, you can't see from the road, is how much will it hold a whole rain and not discharge anything, and then slowly dissipate till the next rain comes. If it's close to the pipe and the pipe's still working, it's technically just sheeting.
Right.
So our discharges out on the Sashabaw Drain to everywhere is just, that volume of discharge is just higher because it's leaving the site. Doesn't mean the pond failed or it's plugged up. You can't tell. That's what we need everybody to understand, is how much water can you keep on your site unless we have a storm event that's so great that it raises up and then leaves your site, right? That's the intent, and we're not getting that performance.
And I think there's a lot of documentation that we can bring and get everybody's input on as to what maintenance schedules that we would like to see implemented. There's a lot of different examples out there. Different counties have all of these standards, so we can kind of get the temperature of everybody to put a document together that, hits all the goals.
That'd be
Okay,
awesome.
that'd be
That'd be
cool.
awesome.
Sam, I think you still wanted to comment on township initiated rezoning before we get there real quick. Rooftop subcommittee, who's volunteering? Sam, Joe, and Belinda. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Dan?
I don't think it'll be much. He understands what we're kind of trying to work with him on, I think.
Okay. Did you want to say something more about it?
I just, as a liaison, I think that, there's a flavor for the planning commission to put some extra effort into getting, our underlying zoning in line with the master plan. And I think that if we need to have additional meetings, or if we need to put more time into it, that I would be willing to go to, I'd go to the board if we needed more funding, Brian, or whatever we needed. I think that we're vulnerable by not doing it, and the more public we become, of our intent prior to more applications come helps us defend what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We were very successful with across the street when we fought Walmart. We got our zoning all in order. We changed everything to multi-use. We did a lot of work and we were very successful in it. And I think that being complacent, just because nothing's happened, I also know that, the Dixie corridor, where we wanna go all office service, we wanna look at that. I know Dick's been in touch with the county about that, cause they own the property, so we don't wanna jump in and rezone the county's property and then get into a confrontation with the county. I think it's a discussion that we need to have, that the master plan doesn't really get in depth with that part of the corridor. I'm much more involved with it because I'm on the DDA. I'm trying to look at the corridor as a whole, not just the part that we're at. But that if the county property now is gonna be redeveloped, and if they're getting inquiries about multifamily or different kinds of commercial, I think we need to take that into consideration, and all the way up to the Big Lake Road project, and get a consensus with us as, what do we really wanna see there, to make sure if we're gonna do a zoning, we don't necessarily just say everything's gonna be OS1 just out of the blue. We need to be precise, and OS1 is the perfect zoning to have businesses that operate during normal business hours in a residential style construction that's adjacent to residential. Now, every parcel you get away from that, it gives us more latitude to be more versatile. We had projects that came in 15 years ago, that was next to the county, off the road, and it was retail spaces with lofts above, and it was like a little mini downtown walkable, nice little shopping plaza type, design. It was a PUD and it didn't go through, but you could see how that could work off the road and going in there, and it becoming, now the county property is available. So I think that I've worked on 3 master plans besides this one over my years, and I think that we've gotta look at that county property now that they've bailed. We feel comfortable they're not coming. It's right, that we do look at it differently. We were looking at it before as there was gonna be a courthouse there, and how would we service that courthouse? Well, if there's not gonna be a courthouse there, we don't need to worry about how would we service that. Now we got a clean slate. Even though we're through the master plan process, I think that we need to kinda look at that as a whole, that whole area, and then exponentially move quickly to align our desires with the master plan and the underlying zoning. So
Okay.
that's it.
Brian, you just got any tentative idea what we'll be looking at next one?
Possibly Walden Village, Commercial West.
Anything else?
What's that?
Yeah, what is that?
It's the other side of Walden Center Drive, so it's the restaurants.
How many buildings is it?
3.
3?
Is that house?
Yeah.
Is
Out.
it the final phase? The full final phase?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. Tentatively, they're submitting.
Is the hotel falling away?
Haven't heard anything about it.
No? Oh, I thought I'd heard that was coming.
No, I mean, we've had we've had discussions with the hotel still, but that's it.
Okay. Okay, if nobody else has anything, how about an adjournment?
Motion to adjourn at 9:53. Huh?
8.
Oh.
Seems like that.
Daylight savings.
I was staring at the 9.
Okay. Support, please.
Yep.
Jason, supported it?
Second, yep.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Thank you, folks.